Chapter 832. Emoye's movements paused. He squinted, looking at a place not far from the restaurant. Everyone's gaze seemed to be attracted by that spot. The white specks of light that had suddenly condensed gathered in the void on their own, forming a mysterious array. The magic array spun, releasing a mysterious aura. Strong gusts of wind howled, turning into a long dragon, blowing away the crushed stones on the ground. Amidst the strong wind, 4 figures slowly walked out of it. The wind dispersed. Those 4 figures gradually became clearer. Bufang's hair wasn't tied up with a velvet rope, so it naturally fell down, fluttering in the wind. Yu's body was upright, and her long, straight black hair reached her waist. When her slender legs swayed, it was mesmerizing. Her face was breathtaking, almost suffocating. The last person wasn't so serious. This person was handsome and dashing. He had a flawless face, and his skin was as smooth as a woman's. However, this person had a spicy strip dangling from his mouth. His nostrils were slightly dilated, and an expression of enjoyment could be seen on his face. It wasn't anyone else. It was Hades' Era, the spicy strip lover. As for Lord Go, as soon as he landed, he opened his mouth wide and yawned. Then, he slowly walked with his cat-like steps, wiggling his butt as he walked into the restaurant. This trip had exhausted Lord Go. Right now, Lord Dog just wanted to lie down and have a good sleep. Of course, it would be best if he could eat a plate of sweet and sour ribs first. Lord Go was really fast. His short legs didn't look long, and his cat-like steps were slow. However, his speed was really fast. In just a blink of an eye, he entered the restaurant. However, as soon as he entered the restaurant, Lord Go was about to return to the Path Understanding Tree. His drowsy eyes couldn't help but open. That was because Lord Go found that his spot under the Path Understanding Tree had been occupied. That little girl Hua was covered in blood as she hugged the Path Understanding Tree. She was bawling her eyes out with snot and tears running down her face. She looked extremely sad. Lord Go was stunned. What happened? Naturally, he was very familiar with Hua. This young 7-colored sky-devouring python girl would come to his side every day to cultivate. Sometimes, Lord Go was used to the existence of this little girl, so he didn't have any temper towards her. Even if this lass sometimes pulled his fur out of boredom, the Lord Go would only twitch his nose. To think that this lass would end up in such a wretched state right now. Not only was her entire body covered in blood, she was even hugging onto the Tao Understanding Tree and bawling her eyes out. Just how much grievance did she have to endure? Lord Go strode like a cat and trotted to the side of the Path Understanding Tree, looking at the little girl. The little girl seemed to have sensed Lord Go's aura and stopped crying. She opened her triflower snake eyes and looked at Lord Go. She pouted and tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. She looked extremely miserable and pitiful. Hua's lips parted and trembled. Then, she started bawling her eyes out again. She, the 7-colored sky-devouring python, had never suffered such grievances. That person actually beat her up so badly that her scales were almost all gone. Feeling wronged, Hua wanted to cry. She cried in all sorts of positions. When she saw Lord Go, she wanted to cry even more. With a loud cry, she pounced over and hugged Lord Go's leg, continuing to cry. A dumbfounded look appeared on Lord Dog's face. After understanding the situation for a while, Lord Go's mouth twitched involuntarily. He was also a little speechless. This lass was still a child. The 7-colored sky-devouring python was really like a child in its infancy. Lord Go's ears twitched. His nose twitched as he snorted. However, since that person dared to beat the little girl until she cried, if Lord Go didn't beat the culprit until he cried too, he would feel sorry for the little girl. Lord Go's exquisite paw patted Hua's head. A moment later, he twisted his dog butt, walking out of the restaurant like a cat. Hua stopped crying. She crawled up from the ground, wearing a tattered, blood-stained gold dress. Her buttocks trembled as she followed Lord Go. Bufang furrowed his brows as he sensed the dense pressure in the air. Everything around him had turned into ruins. It seemed the place had changed a lot since he had left. Bufang clasped his hands. He turned around and saw Xiao Bai holding the war god's stick in his god-slaying mode. Behind Xiao Bai, the heavenly secret saintess's white veil was dyed in blood. Her aura was exhausted, and a radiant star compass hovered above her head. Far from them, Chu Chongqing crawled out of the ruins, trembling. Rubble rolled down from his body. His 6-meter-tall body had shrunk. He was weak, gasping for air. His silver hair was stained with dust, covering his face. When he crawled out of the ruins and saw Bufang, he grinned. Then, he lay on the ground, his chest heaving. Old Bu finally came back, and he was exhausted. Without the support of the heavenly secret saintess heavenly star catcher disc, Chu Chongqing didn't have any way to deal with the last powerful demon. He couldn't defeat it. After that demon had swallowed the divine souls of the previous 2 demons, its aura had become even more terrifying. He felt that the demon had almost broken through the 2-mark heavenly ethereal realm, reaching the 3-mark heavenly ethereal realm. It was equivalent to an existence at the divine spirit realm with 3 divine flames. That kind of existence could be considered a peak existence among sect masters. Chu Chongqing had just entered the divine spirit realm, so it was normal that he couldn't be its opponent. In the divine spirit realm, an existence with 1 to 3 divine flames was at the sect master level. Since the number of divine flames was different, the power of the sect master level was also different. At this moment, Chu Chongqing could be considered a big shot at the sect master level. Unfortunately, facing this demon, he was still too weak. 4 to 8 divine flames were the existences at the saint's sovereign level of the Holy Lands. It was extremely difficult to ignite each divine flame, as it required a massive amount of mental energy. Thus, the difference between 1 divine flame was like the difference between heaven and earth. It also showed how terrifying the heavenly star catcher disc was. It could support allies, allowing people to fight 1 realm higher than them. Mo Yi hovered in the air. The wound on his face had healed, and the scar had disappeared. At his level, the healing speed of his wounds had surpassed the limits of ordinary people. Once one entered the divine spirit realm, he was considered extraordinary. The divine spirit realm meant that he had transcended the mortal world. The heavenly ethereal realm corresponded to the divine spirit realm. Of course, it meant that he had transcended the mortal world. Mo Yi was holding mantis shrimp in his hand. Xiaopi was squeezed, his eyes wide open as he blew bubbles from his mouth. The more Mo Yi looked at him, the angrier he became. He was hurt by this mantis shrimp that only knew how to act cute. It was unforgivable. He wanted to squeeze this mantis shrimp to death, but he didn't expect that something would happen. The appearance of the formation puzzled him a little. The others who walked out of the formation made him frown. However, after a moment of surprise, Mo Ye's palm exerted more force, trying to squeeze Shrimpy to death. In the gluttony square, Great White leaned against the wall. His eyes bulged as he gritted his teeth. That damn fellow wanted to squeeze the shrimp ancestor to death. It was like a shrimp on a flat land was bullied by a trash. In the past, the shrimp ancestor was a big shot in the endless sea. Even the Black Dragon King had to show respect to him. Who would have thought that the great shrimp ancestor had become a shrimp that only knew how to act cute? Moreover, he was facing the awkward situation of being squeezed to death. Great White had tears in his eyes as he felt sorry for the shrimp ancestor. Bufang's eyes narrowed. He furrowed his brows and looked in Mo Ye's direction. At first glance, he saw Shrimpy in Mo Ye's palm. Shrimpy's compound eyes almost popped out of their socket. What was that fellow doing? How could he do that to Xiaopi? Xiaopi was a kid that had followed him for a long time. Although Bufang usually used Xiaopi as a seasoning, this kid was still very important to Bufang. Of course, he wouldn't allow others to treat him that way. Thus, Bufang took a step forward, opening his mouth to shout. Let go of that mantis shrimp. His indifferent voice reverberated in the square, lingering and echoing. Everybody was bewildered. At this moment, the atmosphere became somewhat awkward. Xiao Bai's eyes twinkled. A moment later, he pounded the war god's stick hard on the ground. Boom! The war god's stick immediately lifted the crushed stones on the ground, aiming at Mo Yi in the sky. Facing Xiao Bai's attack, Mo Yi was as calm as still water. His figure flickered, disappearing from his original spot. When he reappeared, he was already standing on top of the war god's stick. His feet gently touched the ground. The war god's stick fell on the ground one more time. Xiao Bai was shaken by the giant force, and he couldn't hold the stick anymore. You're just like an ant. I'll deal with you later, Mo Yi said indifferently. The two vertical eyes on his glabella twinkled, emitting radiance. Nethery furrowed her brows. Nether King Erha, who was holding a spicy strip, walked in and out with great interest. It's the Demon Eye clan of the ruined prison. How could the Demon Eye clan appear in the hidden dragon continent? Hades Era asked curiously. He lifted his head to look at the sky. He could feel that the Great Path's principle still existed. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for someone from the Demon Eye race to appear in the mainland. No matter what, the Heaven Pass hadn't been broken yet, and the Great Path still existed. Mo Ye's eyes moved. He didn't care about Xiao Bai but Bu Fong. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he heard the awkward words that the kid had shouted earlier. Under his demon eye, Bu Fong's aura was exposed. Divine Soul Realm one-step soul ladder. This trash, how dare he yell at me like that? Who do you think you are? I'll crush this prawn. What can you do to me? Mo Yi sneered coldly. He had made up his mind, so he wasn't hurried at all. Not only did he want to destroy the heavenly Starcatcher disc, but he also wanted to erase the entire gourmet city from the hidden dragon continent. Everybody here had to die. Mo Sa and Mo Cha were dead. They died in this gourmet city. Since that was the case, he wanted the entire city to be buried along with them. Mo Ye's eyes were cold. All of a sudden, he frowned, looking at Bu Fong. He found that Bu Fong didn't have a bit of fear on his face. Bu Fong was just an ant at the Divine Soul Realm, but he wasn't afraid of him at all? Could it be that his pressure was just for show? Mo Yi didn't know why, but a flame of anger arose in his heart. A moment later, he raised a finger. Buzz, nether energy gathered. A moment later, the nether energy shot out, aiming at Bu Fong. It seemed to turn into a thread. Xiao Bai suddenly stood in front of Bu Fong, holding the war god's stick. He wielded it, fiercely clashing with the nether energy. Xiao Bai staggered several steps backward. The war god's stick fumbled green smoke. Resist? Let's see how many moves your puppet can resist. Mo Yi grinned. His fingers moved, and flows of nether energy shot out. Yu's eyes were sparkling. Hades Era sighed with a spicy strip in his mouth. The ruined prison's people are as hot-tempered as always. Bu Fong, young man, give I 5 spicy strips. I will help you deal with this pretty little fellow. Hades's words made Bu Fong furrow his brows. Then, he turned to look at Hades, exhaling gently. Okay, however, before Bu Fong could finish his words, a magnetic voice interrupted him. Lord Go strode with his graceful, enchanting cat-like steps. His fat body shook as he slowly walked out of the restaurant. Hua, who was covered in blood, followed him. Let Lord Go come here. If he doesn't beat him until he cries, Lord Go will abstain from eating sweet and sour ribs for 3 days. Chapter 833. Let the Lord Go come, and beat him until he cries. A magnetic voice resounded in everyone's ears. Everyone was stunned, and they looked in the direction of the restaurant in astonishment. Over there, a fat dog slowly walked over with its cat-like step. It was a black dog. The fats on its body jiggled uncontrollably as it walked. Its enchanting cat-like steps caused people's eyeballs to involuntarily widen. The dog wagged its tail, which was mesmerizing. Behind the plump dog was a cute little girl who was happily following behind it. The little girl was covered in blood, and her eyes were filled with tears. She pouted and followed the Lord Go with an indignant face. She lifted her head to look at Emoyi, who was hovering in the air. It was this fellow who had beaten her until she cried. She didn't want to cry, as she wanted to maintain her dignity as a divine beast. However, this little girl had never suffered such grievances, so she cried. Now, the Lord Go had helped her regain her dignity. The Lord Go's words made Hades, whose face was filled with excitement, dumbfounded. What the heck? What did this mangy dog mean? When Nether King Ha came back to his senses, he was instantly unhappy. He bit down hard on the spicy strip that he had been sucking for a long time. His eyes were extremely sharp as he looked at Lord Dog. Mangy dog, what do you want to do? You're not being honest. You're trying to steal my business, don't you know? In ancient times, people would be dragged into a pig's cage and drowned in it. Do you know that? Hades wasn't happy. He put his hands on his waist and shouted at the Lord Go, who was strutting his cat-like steps. He had negotiated the price with the young Bufang, but that mangy dog had interfered. He wanted to make things difficult for him. Hades was angry, and the consequences were serious. The fat on Lord Go's body trembled. He was too lazy to pay attention to Hades' era. He just rolled his eyes at Hades' era's extreme behavior. Hades became even angrier. This mangy dog had been thinking too much recently. Not only did he steal his business, he even rolled his eyes at him. Did he, Hades' era, lose his status? Following behind Lord Go, Hua raised her hand to wipe away her snot and tears. She didn't have a good impression of Hades' era, who dared to yell at Lord Go. Xiaoya widened her triflower snake eyes and looked at Hades' era. It was as if he wanted to use his gaze to make the latter retreat. Hades was amused by her gaze. He chewed on the chili strip in his mouth and held another chili strip in his mouth. The corners of his mouth curled up, and a look of disdain appeared on his handsome face. Bufang didn't think that Lord Go would take the initiative to speak. His eyes went past Lord Go, falling on Hua. Seeing Hua covered in blood, Bufang's face darkened. Who did this to Little Flower? Bufang was enraged. He narrowed his eyes, turning to look at Emoyi, who was hovering in the air. Was it that guy? He hurt Chu Chongqing and Hua, and now he wanted to kill Xiaopi. This guy was courting death. Lord Go, beat him until he cries. I'll cook you sweet and sour dragon ribs, Bufang said with a cold face. Lord Go snorted, and the fat on his dog face shook. Sweet and sour dragon ribs? That's really delicious, ah. It had been a long time since he had eaten it. He had eaten it several times in the Light Wind Empire. Although it was a low-grade lesser dragon meat, it was still dragon meat. Bufang boy, just wait for a good show, Lord Dog said, twitching the corner of his mouth. Hades' era looked at Bufang, then at Lord Go. His nostrils flared, and he wasn't happy. You mangy dog, you want to steal my business from I, stop. Let's fight for 300 rounds. Hades' era was so enraged that his hair stood on end. Lord Dog glanced at the Nether King from the corner of his eyes, and a playful smile appeared on his face. You think you can beat me, Lord Go? Hades' cheerful face stiffened. He was even more enraged. In the void Mo was a little speechless as he looked at the man and the dog. The flame of anger in his body was rising. What were they doing? What did they take him for? They were robbing him? This was a humiliation. Mo of the Demon Eye clan of the Ruin Prison had never suffered such humiliation. These two must die. You guys. Shut up. Mo thundered. The sky-high nether energy on his body diffused. He couldn't stand it anymore. He hated that he couldn't slap those two to death. However, just as he roared, a voice suddenly rang out. The man and the dog weren't scared. They turned to look at him. You shut up. Mo was bewildered. When he got a hold of himself, his lungs were about to explode. This kind of humiliation made him crazy. You guys, as he was about to lose his mind, he felt something slip from his hand. The mantis shrimp he had grabbed suddenly turned into a jet of gold light, shooting away with a sizzle. It moved so fast, as if it had turned into a gold thread, dashing away. Bufang only saw a blur in front of his eyes, and Shrimpy came running back to him. It lay on his shoulder and spat out bubbles from its mouth. Bufang raised his hand, rubbing Xiaopi. Xiaopi's speed was getting faster and faster. It seemed this little fellow wasn't simple at all. Run? Anyway, you have to die. Mo Yi coldly looked at Xiaopi, who was running away. His face was so cold. All right. It's a deal. We'll take turns to beat it until it cries. Hades Era held a spicy strip in his mouth, squinting at Lord Go as he bargained. Eventually, he seemed to have settled on a plan. His face beamed with excitement. Bufang expressionlessly looked at Little Huss, then at Lord Go. If he wasn't wrong, Little Huss would beat that coquettish bitch until it cries. Then, Lord Go would beat that coquettish bitch until it cries. Bufang seemed to be at a disadvantage, as he had to provide 2 dishes. Lord Go's sweet and sour dragon ribs and Hades Era's spicy strip. He seemed to have been tricked by these 2 fellows. Bufang was bewildered. He immediately understood the key point. He looked at the 2 fellows, speechless. Lord Go's mouth twitched, then he strode out like a cat. This time, let this Lord Go do it first. I'll help this little girl vent her anger. Lord Go twisted his monkey butt, then strode out like a cat, soaring into the sky. Hua's body was covered in blood, but his eyes were bright as he gazed at Lord Go in the sky. Hades Era, who had negotiated with Lord Go, wasn't in a hurry. He continued to hold a spicy strip in his mouth, rubbing his hands with anticipation. Chu Chongqing, who was lying on the ground, looked at Lord Go, who was walking like a cat, and smiled. That Mo Yi was dead. Xiao Bai picked up the war god stick. The ferocious look on his body faded away, and he returned to his normal chubby Xiao Bai appearance. He returned to Bufang, standing behind Bufang. Mo Yi squinted, looking at Lord Go. The 2 vertical eyes on his forehead emitted a mysterious radiance. Nether energy continuously gathered on his body. You're just a dog, and you dare to act tough in front of me? Mo Yi raised his hands, and nether energy quickly gathered on them. Your dog is really fat. I'm afraid it'll taste good, said Mo Yi. A moment later, he moved. His figure suddenly disappeared in the air with a whoosh. Not a single sound was heard. As if he had teleported, he appeared in front of Lord Go, bringing with him a pressure that stirred up a gust of wind. This gust of wind blew on Lord Go's body, making the fat on Lord Go's body sway. His 2 palms aimed at Lord Go's head. His aura made everybody take in a breath of cold air. The dark clouds in the sky rolled behind Mo Yi's back. It was extremely terrifying. It made Mo Yi look like a peerless devil. Many people in the Gluttony Square were shivering. Mo Yi was really terrifying. However, boom! An exquisite dog paw rose. A moment later, it gently patted down. Mo Yi's eyes shrank. The nether energy in his hand shattered into pieces under this paw. Mo Yi was so frightened that he felt as if his pores were about to explode. The 2 vertical eyes on his forehead trembled. His body flashed, trying to dodge. In less than a breath's time, Mo Yi had already moved several miles away. However, a loud thud resounded. The exquisite dog paw still smashed onto his head. OF*CK. Mo Yi cocked his head. He was a little dumbstruck, as if he didn't know why he got hit by the paw. Boom. Mo Yi's body was like a cannonball, smashing into the ground. Boom. Chu Chongqing lay on the ground. He tilted his head and saw Mo Yi's body fall not far from him. The ground cracked, gravel flew in all directions, and a strong gale surged. With a thud, a rock hit Chu Chongqing's face. Chu Chongqing felt a little embarrassed. The ruins exploded. Mo Yi's body turned into a jet of black light, shooting up into the sky. His face was filled with rage. He had never thought that a black dog would smash him to the ground. The vertical eye, which had circles of energy around it, emitted a resplendent light as it stared at Lord Dog. It was as though it wanted to see through Lord Dog. However, just as he was gazing, he saw the black dog, whose fat was shaking, raise its paw. Boom! A dull thud echoed. The dog's paw hit his head one more time. Mo spurted out a mouthful of pitch-black blood. He fell from the sky like a cannonball. Chu Chongqing, who was lying on the ground, had just pulled off the rock that had hit his face when another rock whistled over, hitting his face. Chu Chongqing didn't want to live anymore. He pulled off the rock and turned around. You can't even let me rest in peace? Boom! The ruins exploded one more time. Mo's body stormed out of the rubble. However, before he could steady himself, another dog paw slapped him. Mo was so annoyed that he wanted to vomit blood. Shameless! Can't you give me a break? Boom! Rocks scattered everywhere. A big rock whizzed over, hitting Chu Chongqing's butt, who was lying on the ground. Chu Chongqing's eyebrows twitched. This time, Mo didn't soar into the sky. Instead, he slowly crawled out of the rubble. Blood dripped from his mouth. He was a little annoyed. He couldn't see through that black dog, but the aura it gave him wasn't that terrifying. Was it just a hallucination? He spat out a mouthful of dirty blood. Mo's vertical eye shot out a dazzling radiance, his face ferocious. You fat dog! Go die! Buzz! Instantly, energy gathered in the vertical eye, twisting the void. The two vertical eyes on the forehead were the strongest attack of the Demon Eye clan. Its attack power was peerless. A white light beam shot out, aiming at the Lord Go. Mo sneered. His eyes stared at the sky. He wanted to see the scene of that fat dog being blown into pieces by the light beams. No one could resist that light beam. However, shortly after, his face froze. That's because he saw the fat dog wobbling as it raised its paw. The dog's paw lightly tapped on the beam of light, and the beam of light shot out from the demon eye was scattered. It was smashed, turning into dots of gentle energy, dispersing King Gentle. Why was the demon eye's light beam, which had never failed before, blocked by a dog? He must have set up a fake demon eye's light beam. Lord Go's dog eyes indifferently looked at Mo, who was standing at the entrance of the rubble with a dumbstruck face. His magnetic voice arose one more time. Did you cry? Mo's face stiffened. Cry? Cry your sister. He was a boom. Mo's brain hadn't finished working yet. A moment later, his body was smashed into the ground by a giant dog paw made of energy. The ground shook violently and a deep depression appeared. Chu Chongqing, who was lying on the ground, crawled up and ran away. He was afraid that the fat dog would slap him to death before he could fight to his death. Did you cry? Asked Lord Go one more time. The smoke and dust scattered. Mo crawled out of the rubble one more time. He was covered in blood, and his body was shivering. He lifted his head, his vertical eyes opened as wide as they could. Gazing at Lord Go, he seemed to remember something. His face was filled with fear and dread. A black dog. A terrifyingly black dog. Mo shivered. He pointed at Lord Go, shivering. This dog reminded him of a terrifying existence. You're that dog from Earth Prison? Chapter 834. You're that dog from the Earth Prison? Mo was frightened, looking at Lord Go. After getting hit by the dog's paw, he finally pulled himself together. Although he was from the Demon Eye clan of the Ruin Prison, he knew many things about the Earth Prison. Among the 3 prisons of the Netherworld, the Nether Prison was the most mysterious one. However, not many people knew about it. The Earth Prison was different. It was much stronger than the Ruin Prison, and there were countless terrifying existences there. In Mo's memory, if he wasn't wrong, this dog should be a formidable force in the Earth Prison. How could such an existence appear in the Hidden Dragon continent? Why would it appear in a restaurant in the food city of the hidden dragon continent? Wasn't this AF * king joke? At this moment, Mo's heart shivered. He suddenly wanted to cry. He thought that he would have a tragic ending soon. He didn't say anything more. Nether aura burst forth from Mo's body as he stomped on the ground. His figure shot out like a bolt of lightning as he fled into the distance. He didn't want to die. Facing that dog, he could only run. He didn't stand a chance if he tried to resist. Lord Go seemed to have predicted that Mo would run away. He didn't mind. He just raised his paw, elegantly walking like a cat. A moment later, his figure disappeared, reappearing in front of Mo. Mo's 4 eyes widened. A wave of cold air expanded from his feet, covering his entire body. Damn it! Mo cursed under his breath. His body halted immediately. However, what greeted him was a giant dog paw made of black energy that could cover the sky. That dog paw had black energy moving. Mo was very familiar with that kind of energy. It was the aura from the Earth prison. This kind of aura made him even more certain of the black dog's origins. Boom! A loud thud echoed. Mo's body was smashed into the ground by Lord Go from the sky. The ground caved in, showing the shape of a dog's paw. At the edges, fine cracks spread out in all directions. From a distance, Hades Era held a spicy strip in his mouth, looking playfully at the scene. That little guy seems to have recognized that mangy dog. Look at how scared he is. Hades Era walked in and out with a spicy strip in his hand. He couldn't help but shake his head. Did he recognize the identity of Lord Go? Bufang's eyes lit up. He was really curious about the lazy dog's identity. Not long after he opened his business in the Lightwind Empire, this lazy dog had come to visit him until now. Bufang wouldn't believe it if he said that he wasn't curious. The Lord Go was very powerful and mysterious. This was a dog with a lot of stories. Rubbing his chin, Bufang felt that he could find a chance to dig into the Lord Go's history, either from Hades or from the Lord Go. Anyway, he had spicy strips and sweet and sour ribs, so he was not afraid that those two would not tell him. But we agreed to beat him until he cries. Why hasn't he cried yet? This mangy dog is a weak chicken, said Hades. Flowery raised her head and her big eyes twinkled. Her triflower snake eyes spun, and there seemed to be a mysterious energy circulating within them. Flowery grinned and looked at Lord Dog excitedly. Her small fists were clenched tightly, and she waved them around from time to time. Bufang retracted his gaze from Hua. This little girl wasn't someone who knew her place. The tyrannical genes in her bones weren't ordinary. Even though she was beaten until she cried, she still knew to hug the Lord Go's thigh to get back at him. Kids nowadays shouldn't be provoked. In the ruins, Mo staggered to get up. He spat out a mouthful of blood, his face ashen. Without saying anything, he turned around and continued to run. However, thinking about that black dog's identity, Mo felt his legs go soft. He hated it. That black dog had nothing to do after eating its fill. Why didn't it go anywhere else? Why did it run to this broken restaurant in the hidden dragon continent? How could this place be worthy of the Lord Go's identity? Swish! Mo pressed both of his hands on the ground, stopping his body. His mouth twitched as he looked at the fat, trembling black dog in the distance. The Lord Go cocked his head, indifferently looking at Mo. His magnetic voice echoed in the void. Tell me, did you cry? Cry your sister. Mo was so aggrieved that he almost vomited blood. Don't think that you, a black dog, can bully people just because you're strong. You'll be struck by lightning. Mo was resentful. The nether energy on his body shot out one more time as he turned around to run away. Boom. Indeed, before he could take 2 steps, the Lord Go had pounded Mo into the ground one more time. Boom. 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 No one knew how many times Mo had pounded him, but the ground shook and cracked unceasingly. The onlookers were numb. Everybody in the Gluttony Square wore a dull face, their eyes blank. The invincible, arrogant demon was beaten to the point that he didn't even have the guts to retaliate. Were they hallucinating? How could such a terrible thing happen? Bufang and Hades Era sat cross-legged, looking at Mo Yi with boredom. That fellow's really tough. He didn't cry when the Lord Go pounded him like that. Can't he just cry for a while? He's really naughty. Hades bitterly bit his spicy strip. Every time the Lord Go swung his paw, Hades Era's heart tightened. He was afraid that the Lord Go wouldn't control his power well and would slap that little fellow to death. If he was slapped to death, he wouldn't have a chance to ask Bufang for his spicy strip. That would be a big loss. Why don't you cry? Hades was enraged. At this moment, Mo Yi really wanted to cry. Mo Yi had never been in such a difficult situation. A dog had toyed with him. Even if that dog wasn't an ordinary dog, it was still king dog. Cough. Cough. Mo Yi coughed, puffing dust from his mouth. Mo Yi crawled out of the rubble one more time. He didn't run anymore. Turning around, he looked at the Lord Go hovering in the sky. Looking at the black dog with its fat jiggling, his eyes seemed to be filled with rage. Buzz, the black vertical eye opened. Tens of thousands of energy gathered. Mo Yi's aura surged, becoming extremely terrifying. In front of the vertical eye, a black ball of energy gathered. The energy was so violent that it seemed to tear the void. I'm not running anymore. I'm going to risk my life to kill you. Mo Yi was enraged. He wiped the black blood from the corner of his mouth, shouting furiously. The energy in his entire body was gathering. He wanted to risk his life for one last attack. Since he couldn't run away, even if he had to die, he would die a heroic death. To be able to fight against a legendary giant existence in the Earth prison, Mo Yi's death was enough. Come on. You black dog from the Earth prison. Let me see your... Boom. Energy gathered rapidly. Strand after strand of energy condensed. It seemed as though the void was about to be torn apart. At this moment, Mo Yi's aura seemed to boil up. However, when his energy reached the highest point, when Mo Yi's aura was at its highest, a dog's paw fell from the sky. He was pounded into the ground one more time. The energy he had gathered was shattered under the dog's paw. Puff! He spurted a mouthful of black blood. Mo Yi didn't want to live anymore. He lay on the ground, not wanting to move. Why didn't he just die like that? How could they torture people like that? However, Mo Yi didn't die. He moved. Crushed stones rolled, and he crawled out of the rubble. Mo Yi looked at the indifferent Lord Go, whose fat was shivering. An indescribable sorrow rose in his heart, making his nose sour. The Lord Go looked at him. His magnetic voice echoed. Are you crying? Brother dog. You won. Can you give me a quick death? A scholar can be killed, but not humiliated. Mo Yi's nose was sour and his eyes were red. He held back his tears, not letting them fall. He glared at the Lord Go. Seems it's not enough. Then, one more paw. The Lord Go curled his lips. A moment later, he raised his exquisite dog paw. In the void, energy gathered, turning into a giant dog paw. The dog paw hovered above Mo Yi's head. The rumbling energy moved, making Mo Yi feel like he didn't want to live anymore. Thud! Mo Yi kneeled on the ground, facing the Lord Go. A moment later, he covered his face and cried. Bean-sized teardrops squeezed out of his eyes. To survive, he was so wrong that he cried. Mo Yi felt extremely aggrieved. He had no choice. If he wanted to live, he could only cry. However, Mo Yi secretly swore that he would take revenge for this humiliation. The river flows east for 30 years, and then west for 30 years. His heart was filled with so much grief. Mo Yi just wanted to pretend to cry. However, as soon as he cried, all of his grievances burst out. Being abused by a dog like a toy, Mo Yi's body and mind were seriously damaged. Thus he couldn't stop crying. Her cries were heart-wrenching and extremely tragic. The Lord Go was a little embarrassed. He looked at Emoyi. His dog nose twitched. Not far from him, Hua saw Emoyi crying. She excitedly swung her fist. This fellow had bullied her and made her cry. Now, she would let him taste the feeling of being beaten until he cried. Lolita's revenge. 10 years was not too late. It wasn't that she didn't want to take revenge, but it wasn't the right time yet. Everyone looked at each other with a strange expression. They did not know what to say. Such a powerful demon was now kneeling on the ground, crying bitterly. His image seemed to have collapsed. Emoye's snot and tears rolled down his face. He felt like he was suffocating. Bufang wore an odd face. He didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Hades, who was sitting next to Bufang, jolted up from the ground. His eyes sparkled. His hair fluttered, and half of his bangs hung down, covering half of his face. His palm covered half of his face. He held a spicy strip in his mouth, his eyes gloomy. Finally, it's time for I to take action. Bufang, young man, remember the spicy strip you promised me. I also want to beat him until he cries. Emoyi cried. Finally, he submitted to the Lord Go's dog paw. The Lord Go wasn't interested. He twitched his mouth and glanced at Emoyi, who was kneeling and crying on the ground. Swaying his dog tail, he strode back with his cat-like step. After a few steps, he returned to Hua. I beat him until he cries. Are you satisfied now? The Lord Go looked at Hua, speaking casually. Hua was so excited. His triflower snake eyes moved as he grinned. Emoyi didn't expect that terrifying dog to leave just like that. Did he spare his life? Wiping the tears on his face, Emoyi suddenly had a gleam of hope. If he didn't die, he should run. Emoye's body shot up from the ground. Thick nether energy moved around his body, boom. It seemed like he was about to break the void. Emoyi wanted to run away. However, just as his figure soared into the sky and flew a few meters, he was intercepted by a figure. It was a figure so handsome that even women would be jealous of him. His shiny black hair cascaded down his face. His handsome face was melancholic, and he held a spicy strip in his mouth, which made him look more experienced. Emoye's eyes focused. A moment later, his flame of rage exploded. Someone had stopped him. Don't provoke me. Get lost. He was really angry at this moment. He just wanted to run away. The fear that Black Dog had brought him made him a little confused. He thought that he had to run away and tell the High Priestess this news. The giant existence of the Earth prison in the hidden dragon continent. Once this news was sent back, it would definitely cause a great earthquake. Hades covered his face with one hand. He tilted his body and lifted his head. With a spicy strip in his mouth, he squinted at Emoyi. His mouth moved, mumbling, "Who did you say should get lost? That mangy dog beat you until you cried. Now its eyes turn." Emoyi was bewildered. A moment later, Hades Era raised his hand, pointing at Emoyi. His mouth moved, and the spicy strip moved to the other side of his mouth. Are you going to cry again? Chapter 835. Are you ready to be beaten until you cry? Nether King Erha's words carried a hint of laziness. His shiny black hair fluttered in the wind, and a devilish smile hung on his devilish face. Together with the spicy strip at the corner of his mouth, he looked even more experienced. However, his words made Emoyi dumbstruck and speechless. It's that King thing again. Does everybody want to beat him until he cries? It was okay if it was that dog. No matter what, that dog had a terrifying background. But where did this man get the guts to say such words? Did he think that Emoyi was easy to bully? No matter what, he was an expert of the Demon Eye clan in the Ruin Prison. The Demon Eye clan was a big clan in the Ruin Prison, with countless experts. Except for that dog, who was Emoyi afraid of? Get lost. Anyone who stops me will die. Emoyi was enraged. The vertical eye on his forehead opened. Thick energy gathered in front of that vertical eye. Shortly after, it became a black energy ball. His aura was rocketing. He was enraged. The flame of anger in his body burned fiercely, as if it wanted to burst out of his chest. He was afraid of the Lord Go. That was why he wanted to run away. He had planned to destroy the entire gourmet city, killing all the creatures there. He wanted to destroy the heavenly star-catcher disc as well. However, that dog's appearance had messed up his plan. He had never thought that he would do that. He was beaten by a dog until he cried. It was shameful. No, actually, it wasn't shameful to be beaten by that dog. However, it was shameful to be beaten until he cried in front of so many people. Thus, Emoyi was enraged. At this time, there was actually someone who dared to block his path recklessly. This person was really courting death. The energy in his vertical eye became thicker. He hadn't used the move he had used against the Lord Go. This time, he wanted to use it all. He wanted to let everybody know that he, Emoyi, wasn't weak. He was just weak in front of that dog. Boom, boom, boom. Tens of thousands of clouds rolled and gathered above Emoyi's head. They became darker and darker. A moment later, Emoyi opened his mouth and roared. His roar reached the 9 heavens. Boom. A dull thud echoed. The howling stopped abruptly. Emoyi was petrified at his spot. A chill rose from his body. That was because the youth not far away from him had disappeared. Before he could even catch a glimpse of him, the youth had already appeared in front of him. He raised a finger and pointed at the black energy ball between his eyebrows. Youngsters nowadays are so domineering. How dare they yell at I? How naughty. Hades's face was calm as he pointed his finger at an energy ball in front of Emoyi. The energy ball was about to blast out, but at this moment, it was unable to do so no matter how hard it tried. It was forcefully suppressed and unable to erupt. That kind of grievance made Emoyi want to cry. It was like a piece of shit that had been brewing for a long time, the feeling of wanting to take a dump but not being able to. Emoyi's face was a little distorted. Suddenly, a chill rose from his body. This guy suppressed his demon eye attack with just a finger? This seemed a little scary. Seems like you're not ready to be beaten until you cry. Too bad, I won't give you more time to prepare. Cry all you want. It's not a crime, Hades said. A moment later, a wisp of nether energy twirled around his finger. Seeing that wisp of nether energy, Emoyi's eyes shrank. From that wisp of nether energy, he could feel a familiar aura. That aura was the same as the black dog's aura from before. Same. What the F***ck? That fellow in front of him was also from Earth Prison? What the heck? Boom. Nether energy shot out. Terrifying energy waves burst out. The energy Emoyi had been brewing for a long time exploded in front of his head. Like a cannonball, he was blasted down from the sky and smashed on the ground. Dust rose from the ground. Black energy rolled and rolled in the sky. Hades' era held a spicy strip in his mouth. When he moved his mouth, the spicy strip twitched. Young man who dares to shout at I. Harumph. Hades' era stroked his long hair. His hair fluttered, revealing his handsome face. His body slowly floated down from the sky, landing on the ground. In the ruins, crushed stones rolled and rattled. A figure covered in black blood crawled out of the ruins. Emoyi gasped for air. He seemed to be hurt badly. His body was broken and full of wounds. The energy he had been accumulating for a long time exploded in just a blink of an eye, almost blowing him up. He didn't die. He was really lucky. The vertical eye on his forehead moved. A moment later, it opened. It was such a close explosion, but the 2 vertical eyes weren't hurt at all. He was really lucky. The Demon Eye clan paid a lot of attention to the protection of their vertical eyes. It was their pride, and it was their main attack. You. Who are you after all? I am Emoyi. What grudge do I have against you? Emoyi lifted his head, his face resentful. He gritted his teeth, asking coldly. Hades' era clasped his hands. His eyes squinted. His mouth moved, and the spicy strip shrank a little. No grudge. I took your spicy strip to help you eliminate disasters, Hades said. Emoyi was so upset that he almost vomited blood. What the hell was a spicy strip? Emoyi couldn't even compare to a spicy strip? He was so enraged. You're also a member of the Netherworld. Why do you want to kill each other? After the Heaven Pass tribulation, the Netherworld will completely occupy the Hidden Dragon continent. At that time, you and I are on the same side. Why don't we talk nicely? The Heaven Pass tribulation had begun. This time, the Ruin Prison was confident that they could break the Hidden Dragon Heaven Pass. At that time, the experts of the Ruin Prison would invade and occupy the Hidden Dragon continent. At that time, the Demon Eye clan would send their experts here. At that time, it wouldn't be too late to clean up this food city. However, before that, he had to find a chance to destroy the Heavenly Star Catcher Disc. Emoyi seemed to think about the Heavenly Star Catcher Disc. His eyes sparkled and he exhaled. His eyes moved past Hades' era, falling not far from him. There, the Heavenly Secret Saintess was sitting cross-legged on the ground, her face ashen. Above her head, a massive star compass was hovering, shooting beams of light. It was the Heavenly Star Catcher Disc, the item he wanted to find a chance to destroy. Emoyi's mind wandered. When he came back to his senses, he discovered that the person had already appeared beside him. Hades' era looked at Emoyi indifferently. With the spicy strip in his mouth, he said, "Don't talk. Cry. Cry your sister. I've been beaten until I cried once, and you still want me to cry? What's wrong with this world?" Emoyi's eyes shrank. He was enraged one more time. "You boom." He opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, before he could finish his words, a slap had interrupted him. That slap landed on Emoyi's head, making him stagger backwards several steps. Dumbfounded. His face was bewildered. Emoyi pulled himself together. He was so enraged that he was almost crazy. Flames of rage shot out from his 4 eyes. "You dare to hit me!" Emoyi was enraged, looking at Hades' era. Hades' mouth moved, and the spicy strip in his hand changed position. He glanced at Emoyi. What did this fellow mean? The mangy dog could hit him, but he, Hades, couldn't? Why did he have to look down on the mangy dog and Hades? Boom. Disregarding the consequences, Hades slapped him one more time. This slap landed on Emoyi's head. It wasn't heavy, but it made Emoyi stagger several steps back. Emoyi was shaking. He raised his hand, pointing at Hades' era. Bam! His hand, which he had just raised, was slapped swollen. Emoyi was enraged. Nether King Ha slowly walked forward, his body carrying a terrifying stagnant aura. That aura burst out, forcing Emoyi to retreat continuously. While retreating, Emoyi wanted to say something. However, before he could finish, he was interrupted by a slap on his head. He was so aggrieved. Why did he feel like a little kid being bullied by a little kid? "Are you going to cry or not?" Hades slapped him. Emoyi's head was about to swell. He took several steps back, landing on his butt. "Arg. I'll risk my life with you. You're King bullying me." Emoyi was so enraged that his chest was about to explode. His vertical eyes opened as wide as they could. Instantly, he leaped up. His fists were twirled with nether energy as he attacked Hades' era. Hades didn't mind it at all. Originally, he was afraid of the Great Path's principle. After all, he had been struck by lightning several times. However, Emoyi's group had entered the Hidden Dragon realm, using the Great Path's principle. Thus, Hades could casually use his cultivation base, and he wouldn't be struck by lightning. Hades could use his cultivation base as he pleased. Why would he be afraid of Emoyi? His hand slapped, and Emoyi's fists were slapped away. His hand shook, and with a thud, he hit Emoyi's head again. Mo was in so much pain that he staggered backward, clutching his head. He was so enraged that tears rolled down his cheeks. Turning around, he took big steps and began to run. Even if he couldn't beat him, couldn't he run away? However, how could he outrun Hades' era? He was caught shortly, and his head was slapped. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. Everyone stared blankly at this scene, their mouths twitching uncontrollably. It was supposed to be a serious battle, but why did it become so funny? Everybody felt sorry for Mo for a second. Boom! With a loud thud, Hades' era pressed Mo to the ground one more time. Why aren't you crying? Did I hit you too hard? Hades yelled while hitting him. Not far from him, Bufang rolled his eyes. Lord Go couldn't help but snort, shaking his head. That moron Mo was so enraged. He could be killed, but he couldn't be humiliated. Boom! A tremendous aura shot out from his body. A moment later, Hades' era wasn't paying attention, and he was blown away by the wave of air. His body turned around, falling far from him. Mo's face was ferocious. His skin had turned blue, and two mysterious, ferocious lines were moving on it. Those demon lines looked like they were about to burn. Mo's aura was rising fast. Even if I have to die today, I will drag you, damn you, down with me. Mo was enraged. He burned his demon lines, bursting with more power. Because of Hades' era's oppression, he had to resist. Wherever there was oppression, there would be resistance. Hades frowned. Holding a spicy strip in his mouth, he exhaled gently. It's like this, and you still won't cry. Boom! The demon lines burned to the extreme, bursting with a black flame. The flame was so hot that it covered Mo's entire body, turning him into a flaming man. Hades' era looked at him indifferently. He stretched out his hand and stuffed the chili strip in his mouth into his mouth, then slowly chewed. Gulp! He swallowed the spicy strip. Then, the Nether King raised his head, and his eyes suddenly turned pitch black. Behind him, a huge, pitch-black shadow appeared. The shadow was 10 zhang tall, and nether energy filled the air. A moment later, the shadow opened its eyes. It seemed to tear apart a part of the world. Mo, who had turned into a flaming man, shivered. The flames on his body dimmed a little. This shadow, this pressure, could it be? Chapter 836. The terrifying virtual image was about to cover the sky and cover the sun. The Nether King's face was indifferent, becoming cold and arrogant. The coldness in his eyes made everyone who looked at him feel a chill in their hearts. It was Hades' era who wasn't the usual clown. At this moment, Era made Bufang feel like the Lord of the Netherworld. The Lord Go slightly lifted his dog head, looking at Hades' era. He couldn't help but twitch his mouth. That fellow started to act like a tyrant again. If the Great Path's principle of the Hidden Dragon continent still existed, would he dare to act so arrogantly? The lightning punishment would kill him. Different from the others, Mo was the one who was scared the most. The terrifying aura from that phantom made him feel like he had returned to the Netherworld. Facing the peerless existence of the Netherworld, that feeling was simply too terrifying. This phantom, this aura, this feeling, it made him think of a terrifying existence. There were many powerful existences in the Earth prison, but only a few of them were really famous. That black dog was one of them. This fellow in front of him reminded Mo of another terrifying existence. That was the real high level of the Netherworld. No matter if it was in the Ruin prison, Earth prison, or even Nether prison, they were the overlords who could shake an entire region. The Tenjong Tall Phantom made Mo, who had ignited his demon marks and wanted to go berserk, completely dumbstruck. Nether, Lord of the Netherworld? He lifted his head, looking at the massive phantom of the Demogorgon. That phantom pressed down on him, making his entire body shiver. The burning flame on his body dimmed a lot. At this moment, he only had one word in his mind that he wanted to say. That dog in the Earth prison, and the noble Lord of the Netherworld in front of him. Did Mo ye step on dog sh*t when he went out? Cat sh*t. Nowadays, anything related to dogs was a taboo. Mo ye's mouth trembled. Under Hades' era's gaze, his mind shivered, as if he was about to collapse. In fact, he had already collapsed. Thud. Mo ye knelt down again in front of Hades' era. Bean-sized teardrops rolled down from her eyes. He was sad and depressed. This time, he was crying from the bottom of his heart. He really wanted to cry. Thinking back to his previous experience, he felt that he had experienced the most inhumane devastation. Ravaged by a black dog, ravaged by a clown. Mo ye, whose entire body was burning with black flames, was crying loudly. Tears were squeezed out of her eyes and dripped down from the corners of her eyes. It sounded like a bead curtain with a broken thread, making it hard for him to breathe. Hades' era indifferently looked at Mo ye, who was kneeling on the ground and crying. He tilted his head, then gently exhaled. The aura on his body slowly dispersed. When the phantom disappeared, the terrifying aura that made Mo ye unable to move also disappeared. Hades scratched his head, then his hair. He had always wanted this young man to cry. Now that he was crying, Hades suddenly felt a little embarrassed to continue beating him. His heart was still too soft. Of course, Mo ye felt the pressure on his body disappear. He couldn't help but lift his head. His face, which was covered by the black flames, revealed a gleam of joy. He stood up, slowly approaching Hades' era. Sir, are you the Sir from the Netherworld? Are you the Supreme Lord of the Netherworld? Mo ye wore a fanatical face as he looked at Hades' era, approaching him step by step. His voice was trembling, filled with respect. Listening to him, Hades' era enjoyed it a lot. Yes, it's him. It's him. The supreme existence in the Netherworld. He's the Lord of the Netherworld. Era. Young man, you're not bad. You can recognize Tsk. You have a bright future. The corners of Hades' era's mouth rose. He brushed his hair, which fluttered. I have eyes, but I didn't recognize you. I hope you can. Hades' era squinted. Mo ye's words really worked on him. All of a sudden, Hades' era furrowed his brows. Mo ye, who was approaching him, suddenly moved. In just a blink of an eye, he zoomed out, leaving a shadow in the void. In just a blink of an eye, he tore the void. Tens of thousands of black flames surged. Mo ye halted, appearing above the heavenly star-catcher disk above the heavenly secret saintess's head. The sudden turn of events caused everyone to be slightly taken aback. A moment later, everybody took in a breath of cold air. Hades' era pulled himself together. Looking at Mo ye, who had disappeared in front of him and reappeared on the heavenly star-catcher disk, he was enraged. He found that he had been tricked. This coquettish bitch was actually using sweet words to numb him. His real goal was to attack the heavenly star-catcher disk. Could it be that everything this fellow said before was just to fool this king? Unforgivable. Mo ye's eyes sparkled crazily. That's right. His real target was the heavenly star-catcher disk hovering above the heavenly secret saintess's head. As long as he could destroy the heavenly star-catcher disk, his mission would be completed. Even if he was beaten to tears by a man and a dog twice, destroying the heavenly star-catcher disk wouldn't be a loss. Moreover, he had burned all the demon marks on his body. Once the demon marks were burned, it was the same as burning his vitality. Although he could gain a lot of power, his lifespan would be shortened, which would hasten his death. Back then, Granny Mo had ignited the divine fire on the divine altar. It was the same principle. Igniting his demon marks was the same as the divine flame being ignited. Everybody was bewildered. They didn't expect that after Mo ye cried and begged for mercy, his target was the heavenly secret saintess, who was wounded badly. Did he want to kill them all? Heavenly star-catcher disk. Break for me. Mo ye urged all the energy in his body. A terrifying flame swept over, shooting up into the sky. His body became hazy. He punched out, and a monstrous flame burst forth. His glabella, which was covered in flames, split, and the two vertical eyes merged, turning into a vertical eye. That vertical eye released a terrifying energy fluctuation. The flame and the energy fluctuation blended, and the power it released reached a level that could shatter the void. The heavenly secret saintess had never thought that Mo would do that. At this moment, her heart tightened. The heavenly secret saintess lifted her head. Her hair fluttered under the terrifying flame and pressure. Her blood-stained veil also scattered and fluttered in the wind. In just a moment, everybody's eyes were fixed on her. Without the veil, the heavenly secret saintess' face was revealed. It was a peerlessly beautiful face that made people gawk and drop their jaws. That face could make people intoxicated. She was pitiful and moving. Her nose was high, and her skin was white as if she was carved from jade. Her eyes were as bright as stars, and her red lips were soft and tender. Her facial features were perfect, like a perfect painting. People couldn't help but be deeply attracted to her. Beautiful, too beautiful. No! The heavenly secret saintess's eyes shrank, her face frightened. She had never thought that Mo's target was her heavenly star-catcher disc. To protect the heavenly star-catcher disc, Granny Mo had sent her here. If the heavenly star-catcher disc was destroyed, wouldn't Granny Mo's efforts be in vain? The heavenly secret saintess wanted to stop him, but she didn't have the strength to do so. Her cultivation base was too weak. No, it wasn't that her cultivation base was weak. The enemy's cultivation base was too strong. Bufang was bewildered. He looked at the heavenly secret saintess's shattered veil. At the moment her face was exposed, Bufang was a little surprised. He recognized that the heavenly secret saintess was someone he knew. That peerlessly beautiful face appeared clearly in his memory. It was her. The corners of Bufang's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but mutter. The heavenly secret saintess was the seventh elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect in the Light Wind Empire, the beautiful woman who loved to eat. Her name was Yen. Today, Yen's aura had changed greatly. Her cultivation base had also changed, and her face had become otherworldly and refined. However, her eyes didn't change much. It was another acquaintance. Boom! The heavenly star-catcher disc felt the danger. It spun furiously. That terrifying spinning energy made people take in a breath of cold air. Circles of terrifying energy ripples spread out in all directions, rumbling in the world. Buzz! Buzz! Everybody was bewildered. In their eyes there was only so much star energy moving. The radiance of the stars shone down, causing everyone's eyes to become misty. However, Mo's eyes were still crazy. He didn't hold back his energy, pouring it on the heavenly star-catcher disc. The pale blue heavenly star-catcher disc spun rapidly. However, a moment later, it froze. It was stuck. Everybody's eyes shrank to the size of a mung bean. They found so many fine cracks on the heavenly star-catcher disc. Boom! A loud explosion echoed. The heavenly star-catcher disc shattered instantly. Swoosh! Yen, who was connected to the heavenly star-catcher disc, spurted a mouthful of blood. Her body was like a withered flower, her eyes lifeless as she fell to the ground. Her blood floated in the air, turning into a blood mist that slowly dispersed. The heavenly star-catcher disc shattered. At this moment, Hades' Era and Lord Go were bewildered. Hades' Era lifted his head, looking at the void. Lord Go's dog nose twitched. The corners of his mouth rose as he looked at the void. Boom! Rumble! Boom! In the sky, dark clouds gathered rapidly. Inside the dark clouds, lightning was moving like a dragon. All of a sudden, an invisible hand soared into the sky. It forcefully patted and scattered the dark clouds. The lightning dragon was pulled out and crushed. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, everyone came back to their senses. The beautiful heavenly secret saintess had fallen the moment the heavenly star-catcher disc was broken? Many people were so skeptical. In the restaurant, Emolyoji was covered in blood. He staggered, looking at the scene. He clenched his fists, pounding them on the ground. His face was filled with resentment and unwillingness. In the end, the heavenly star-catcher disk was destroyed. Countless beams of starlight fell, sprinkling on the heavenly secret saintess, who was lying on the ground. In the gluttony square, everybody sighed regretfully. Hades' era gritted his teeth, breaking his spicy strip. He frowned. The heavenly star-catcher disk's destruction was his fault. If he hadn't been careless, how could Moyi have destroyed it? Therefore, the Nether King was a little angry, because that Moyi actually used respect for him to numb him. His body disappeared in just a blink of an eye, reappearing on Moyi's body in the void. Moyi was laughing crazily. The demon flame on his body burned as he laughed crazily. His laughter seemed to be bursting out all of the grievances he had previously held. The heavenly star-catcher disk was finally destroyed. Boom! Boom! A moment later, the demon eye on Moyi's forehead exploded. His entire body was cut in half. A space crack appeared, and a ferocious, massive hand reached out of it. Slowly, a terrifying aura diffused. A figure crawled out of the crack on Moyi's forehead. Chapter 837. The vertical eye on Moyi's forehead radiated dazzlingly. All of a sudden, it tore open, turning into a space slit. From that slit, a ferocious claw reached out. It looked like a formidable existence was crawling out of it. Moyi's wild laughter hadn't faded yet, but his body had already been torn apart. His body was cut in half. His laughter stopped abruptly. A moment later, it turned into a terrifying roar. Everybody in the Valley of Gluttony was shaken. They all took in a breath of cold air. That terrifying scene made everybody feel incredulous. They had never seen such a horrible scene before. His body was torn apart, turning into a slit. An even more formidable existence was crawling out of that slit. Lord Go crouched on the ground. He indifferently lifted his doggy eyes to look at the formidable existence crawling out of the slit that Moyi had created. His doggy mouth twitched, grunting faintly. It seemed he didn't care about the formidable existence that was about to crawl out of the slit. He even had a faint disdain for it. Hades' era's face was a little dark. His shining black hair fluttered in the air, hitting the void. He exhaled gently, taking out a spicy strip. He opened his mouth and bit it. He clasped his hands, hovering in the air. The slit appeared not far from him, then slowly tore it apart. At this moment, Hades' era was a little angry. Moyi had tricked him, which made him feel embarrassed. Now, he wanted to see what tricks Moyi would play. Being the lord of the netherworld, Hades had his own pride. No matter who came later, they would have to endure his terrifying attack. Boom. Rumble. Boom. The great paths principle of the hidden dragon continent seemed to start to collapse. After the heavenly star-catcher disk was destroyed, the perfect great paths principle began to crack. Some experts started to attack those cracks unceasingly. They wanted to tear the great paths principle of the hidden dragon continent completely. The great paths principle of the hidden dragon continent wasn't really strong. And now, with a crack, it was even weaker. Crack, crack. The void was torn. Then, a huge monster crawled out of it. The monster's body was navy blue, and its body was like a berserk lion. There was an opening on the lion's head, and there was a rolling eyeball in its mouth. After the three-eyed demon lion drilled out of the crack, it stood proudly in the air. Its claws fiercely slammed into the air, causing the air to tremble and shatter. Roar. The lion's roar resounded in the surroundings. Everyone felt their hearts tremble. This lion's roar seemed to be roaring in their hearts, causing all of their bodies to soften and tremble uncontrollably. What a terrifying lion's roar! The pressure contained in the lion's roar was like a boulder the size of a small mountain, pressing down on their hearts, making them almost unable to breathe. Ruin prisons demon eye clans. Three-eyed wild lion. A heavenly, ethereal realm spirit beast? Hades' era calmly looked at the ferocious lion, holding a spicy strip in his mouth. His face was calm, as if he didn't care about the lion at all. Since it's a three-eyed wild lion, it should be following an expert from the Demon Eye clan, right? Hades' eyes were cold and vicissitude. Because of Moye, Hades' era didn't have a good impression of the entire Demon Eye clan. Sure enough, a figure slowly walked out of the crack behind the three-eyed wild lion. That figure was wearing pitch-black armor, and there were two curved horns on his head. Formidable. Terrifying. These were the first impressions people had when they saw that figure. However, Hades, Lord Go, and the others didn't care about that figure at all. As soon as that figure appeared, he rode on the three-eyed wild lion. The dark blue lion's aura was so intimidating that it could subdue the entire world. Finally, the heavenly star-catcher disk is broken, and the great path of the hidden dragon continent is incomplete. No one can stop our ruined prison anymore. The expert sneered. A moment later, his eyes raked through the entire area. His first glance fell on Hades' era, who was the closest to him. This expert knew that Moye was dead. He felt a little regretful. No matter what, Moye was an extremely talented junior of the Demon Eye clan. Who killed the genius of our Demon Eye clan? Come here and accept your death. Riding on the three-eyed wild lion, the expert's aura pressed everywhere, speaking coldly. Hades' era looked at him playfully. With a spicy strip hanging at the corner of his mouth, he revealed a devilish smile. That smile made that expert shiver and feel strange. Buzz Moye's soul floated out of his broken body. It hovered by that expert. That expert was a little happy. Moye's soul hadn't scattered yet. Since he had burned his demonic marks, his divine soul should have been burned to ashes. However, as long as his soul was still there, he would have a chance to be reborn. With the ruined prisons level, they had a chance to do that. Moye was bewildered. All of a sudden, he gawked because he saw the three-eyed wild lion and the Demon Eye clan's expert. However, Moye was so frightened. He glanced at Hades' era in the distance and saw the murderous aura in Hades' era's eyes. He had tricked Hades, seizing the chance to destroy the heavenly star-catcher disk. Hades must be enraged. The prestige of a big shot couldn't be offended, let alone tricking him. The Lord of Netherworld had appeared in the hidden dragon continent. He must tell his lord this news. Moye dropped his mouth in fright. He looked at the Demon Eye clan's expert as if he wanted to say something. However, Hades just held a spicy strip in his mouth. He raised his hand, pointing at Moye's soul. An invisible energy wave expanded, freezing Moye's soul at his spot. He couldn't move and he couldn't send any message. You've tricked I. Don't talk. I will send you to hell to reincarnate, Hades said indifferently. In the next moment, a terrifying aura burst forth from his body. While Moye's eyes were filled with fear, he tore the void behind him. A terrifying suction force came from the void, sucking Moye's soul into it. Moye struggled, but he couldn't move. The void closed, and Moye's soul disappeared completely. No one knew what kind of torment the so-called reincarnation was. At least, Moye was terrified. The Demon Eye clan's expert had never thought that Hades' era would dare to act violently in front of him. He had come riding the three-eyed wild lion, but that man still dared to attack him. The space crack that appeared out of nowhere was beyond his estimation. His soul fragment was devoured, which meant that Moye was really going to die this time. No one could save him. A genius of the Demon Eye clan had fallen right in front of him. The Demon Eye clan's expert was even more enraged. The two vertical eyes on his forehead opened, shooting out dazzling radiance. You! Damn it! Moye seemed to want to say something to him. However, before he could finish, the man in front of him had interrupted him. The Demon Eye clan's expert, who didn't hear him clearly, was enraged. Die! The Demon Eye Clan's expert stepped on the three-eyed wild lion. Instantly, the three-eyed wild lion roared. Its body slashed across the void, dashing toward Hades' era. Opening its mouth, it roared and howled. It was ear-piercing, shaking people's minds. Hades' era looked indifferently. His eyes were cold and his face was cold. Demon Eye Clan. Harumph. His body shook. Behind Hades' era, a massive phantom emerged. That phantom was 10 zhang tall. It was the phantom of a real demonic god. It was just a pressure, but it had made the Demon Eye Clan's expert stiffen. The three-eyed wild lion's ferocious appearance had turned into a soft kitten, kneeling in the void. That pressure had made him not dare to move. What was going on? The Demon Eye Clan's expert was bewildered. What the F***ck was that thing? Wasn't it the hidden dragon continent? Why did such an existence appear here? The Nether King looked on indifferently. In the next instant, he raised his hand and slammed it down slowly. Torrential nether aura revolved and quickly turned into a giant palm that pressed down on the expert of the Demon Eye Clan. Boom! The Demon Eye Clan's expert's face was filled with fear and reluctance. Facing Hades' era's anger, he had no way to resist. A loud explosion echoed. Under Hades' era's palm, he turned into ashes. The three-eyed wild lion crouched on the ground, shivering. He didn't dare to move, and his brave appearance had disappeared. That Demon Eye Clan's expert was the backup plan of the Demon Eye Clan's High Priestess. If Mo Yi and Mo Sa failed, the High Priestess could summon him to destroy the Heavenly Starcatcher disc. As long as Mo Yi died, he would be summoned here. Even the High Priestess didn't expect that his arrangement would result in a double kill. Hades' era slowly walked, holding a spicy strip in his mouth. He walked to the three-eyed wild lion. Lifting his hand, he gently patted the lion. Looking at the three-eyed wild lion's appearance, he grinned. Little lion, I don't have any spicy strips to eat. It's up to you now." The three-eyed wild lion's face was filled with fear. His mane shriveled, sticking to his body. The wind blew, causing the Nether King's hair to flutter. A gentle smile hung on the Nether King's face as he rubbed the lion's head. Mo Yi was dead. This calamity of the Valley of Gluttony seemed to have ended one more time. The Valley of Gluttony was safe again. Everybody looked at the dark clouds in the sky dispersing. Looking at the sunlight slowly descending, they smiled in relief. However, they all felt that the sky was somewhat different now. Bufang furrowed his brows. That Demon Eye Clan's expert was slapped to death by the enraged Hades era. He didn't even have time to react. However, Bufang didn't care about that. His eyes fell on the heavenly secret saintess, An I Yen, in the distance. He slowly took a step forward and came to An I Yan's side. Xiao Bai's eyes sparkled. He followed Bufang. An I Yan's face was ashen. Blood trickled from the corners of her mouth. She looked so dispirited, and her aura was weakening rapidly. Her vitality was draining. If it weren't for the starlight twinkling on her body, the heavenly secret saintess An I Yen would have been dead already. "It's actually you." Bufang's gaze was a little complicated. He did not expect it to be another acquaintance from the Light Wind Empire. "System, can she still be saved?" Bufang frowned and asked the system in his heart. The system did not reply immediately. After a moment of silence, it replied in a serious voice. "There's no way to judge. Life or death depends on one's own will. If one is alive, one will have unlimited opportunities. If one dies, there's nothing to say," the system said. Bufang was speechless. It was as if he hadn't said anything. Since they were all acquaintances, Bufang wanted to find a way to save An I Yen. However, the system did not seem to be willing to provide such a method. "Bufang, young man," there was a call. Hades era rode the huge three-eyed wild lion and descended from the sky. He forced a smile, looking at Bufang. He patted the giant three-eyed wild lion next to him, saying, "Bufang, young man, look what I have brought you. Top-quality ingredients." Bufang looked at Hades. His eyes were indifferent, which made Hades's hair stand on end. Chapter 838. Hades brought the three-eyed wild lion to Bufang's side, smiling awkwardly. Bufang looked at Hades' era. He understood Hades's intention. This fellow was embarrassed because of his carelessness, which led to the destruction of the heavenly star-catcher disc. He was afraid that Bufang would deduct his spicy strips, so he brought a top-grade ingredient to apologize. As a heavenly ethereal realm spiritual beast, the three-eyed wild lion was naturally not ordinary. Its meat quality was extraordinary. Although it could not be compared to an ingredient like the Taotia's heart, it was still much better than an ingredient in the Divine Soul Realm, or even the Divine Soul Realm. However, this time, Hades was wrong. Bufang didn't plan to deduct little Hades' spicy strip. Bufang also knew that this matter wasn't Hades' era's fault. Emoye's sudden outburst was beyond everyone's expectations. No one would have thought that Emoye would burn his demonic marks to destroy the heavenly star-catcher disc. However, Bufang had a headache. He looked at the heavenly secret saintess, Yen, who was lying on the ground, barely breathing. Yen was someone he knew. If he didn't know her, perhaps Bufang wouldn't care. However, since he knew her, he couldn't just ignore her. Thus, Bufang had to think of a way to save Yen. However, the system had said that if Yen wanted to live, she had to rely on her luck and destiny. Bufang trusted the system's words. After all, from the Light Wind Empire until now, although the system sometimes tricked people, most of the time it was still strict and serious. Since the system said that she had to rely on her destiny, it wasn't something that a dish could solve. Bufang walked in front of Yen and looked at her, who was shrouded in starlight and was barely breathing. His brows furrowed and a helpless expression appeared on his face. "Shall Bai carry her? Let's go back to the restaurant." Bufang turned his head and said to Xiao Bai beside him. Xiao Bai retrieved the war god's stick, his eyes twinkling. A moment later, he took a step forward, and his fan-like hand gently descended. He carefully picked up Yen, who was shrouded in starlight. Yen's beautiful face was filled with misery and was covered with a deathly pale color. Her long hair cascaded down like a waterfall. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang walked into the restaurant. Chu Changsheng and the others followed. Hades' era scratched his head, rubbing his hair. He lifted his hand, patting the three-eyed wild lion, who was standing not far from him. Then, he walked toward the restaurant. Soon, they entered the restaurant. In front of the restaurant, Emoye leaned against the door with a desperate face. His eyes were filled with despair. The heavenly star-catcher disc was destroyed, and even the capable saintess was severely injured and on the verge of death. Granny Mo's death had become meaningless. It shouldn't have happened. Granny Mo had calculated everything. How could she have made such a fatal mistake? Granny Mo had said that if the saintess stayed in the restaurant, she wouldn't be in danger, and the heavenly star-catcher disc would be well protected. However, it was all a lie. The saintess was on the verge of death, and the heavenly star-catcher disc was shattered. Everything was going in the worst direction. No. I have to bring the saintess back to the heavenly secret Holy Land. If the Holy Sovereign comes back, he will have a way to save the saintess. Emoye's eyes sparkled with understanding. His eyes sparkled as he stood up, looking at Bufang. "Give me the saintess." Emoye's eyes sparkled with hope. He looked at Bufang, pulling Bufang's vermilion robe. Bufang furrowed his brows, looking at Emoye, who was covered in blood. "You can't save her," said Bufang. "Give me the heavenly secret saintess. The Holy Sovereign has a way to save her. Even if the Holy Sovereign doesn't have a way, the Holy Sovereign has a way." Emoye's eyes gleamed crazily as he screamed at Bufang. His mind was a little chaotic. The heavenly star-catcher disc was broken, and he felt so sad because he had promised Granny Mo to take care of the saintess. He blamed himself, regretted, unwilling and angry at his weak cultivation base. He was too weak, why couldn't he be stronger? I told you! You guys can't save her. No one can save her. Bufang furrowed his brows, his tone unquestionable. He slowly received the heavenly secret saintess from Xiao Bai. The soft touch made Bufang's brows twitch. The starlight spread out and enveloped Yan's figure. It seemed to be somewhat mysterious. Xiao Bai, ask him to get out, Bufang said. Then, he didn't turn his head around, walking deeper into the restaurant. Shortly after, his figure disappeared from Emoliuji's sight. Emoliuji moved. At this moment, the only solution was to bring the saintess back to the heavenly secret Holy Land. Thus, he had to take the saintess away. Even if he had to snatch her, he had to snatch her. Boom. However, as soon as he moved, Xiao Bai's fan-like hand covered his face. Move. Let me go. Emoliuji was enraged. The true energy in his body burst forth. Although he was already seriously injured, he had to take back the saintess even if he had to sacrifice his cultivation base. Troublemaker, a light flashed in Xiao Bai's eyes. With his current fighting competence, how could Emoliuji escape? No matter how much true energy he used, he couldn't get rid of him. Boom. Xiao Bai's hand slightly tightened. Then, Emoliuji staggered a few steps backward. Bufang walked to the staircase, tilting his head. His faint voice arose. Go. If you really want to take Yan away, ask the holy saint or the saint sovereign of your holy land to come. The saintess is hurt. What's the use of them? Bufang's voice carried a hint of anger. As soon as he said that, Emoliuji was dumbstruck. He had never thought that Bufang would say something like that. Yan? Who was Yan? Her Highness the Saintess? Her Highness the Saintess was called Yan. Wait a minute. How did Owner Bu know the Saintess's name? Even he didn't know the Saintess's name? And what did Owner Bu mean? Ask the Saint Sovereign or the Saint Sovereign to come and take her back. Emoliuji's eyes slightly shrank. He was bewildered. While he was still thinking, he found his body flying in the air, making an arc in the air. He fell outside the restaurant and landed on the ground. An ice-cold feeling stimulated his skin, causing his whole body to tremble slightly. He subconsciously glanced at his own body, and his pupils immediately shrank. That was because he discovered that the clothes on his body had been completely torn apart. Naked? Why were his clothes ripped off? Emoliuji's face reddened as he pulled himself together. Bufang's words had woken him up. It seemed Owner Bu and the Saintess knew each other. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called her by her name. If they knew each other, it meant that the Saintess was safe in Owner Bu's place. Actually, Emoliuji was also angry. He agreed with Owner Bu's words. The reason why the Saintess was hurt so badly and Granny Emo was killed by those devils. It was all because of the Saint Sovereign and the Saint Sovereign. If the Saint Sovereign and the Saint Sovereign weren't in the Holy Land, those devils wouldn't have dared to be so arrogant. Thus, Bufang's words enlightened Emoliuji. He covered his lower body, looking at the restaurant and the entrance, which had disappeared a long time ago. Then, he turned around and left. Limping, he staggered as he left. Bufang brought Yan upstairs. Standing at the entrance, he was a little hesitant. He didn't know where to take Yan. After thinking for a while, Bufang opened the door to his room. He opened the door and stepped into the room. He placed Yan, who was covered in starlight, on his soft bed. Looking at Yan's pale face and weak aura, Bufang sighed. Life and death are decreed by fate. Fortune or misfortune, it all depends on you, Bufang said casually. Then, he covered Yan with a blanket, turned around and left the room. Leaving the room, he went downstairs and returned to the restaurant. Many people came to the restaurant. Lord Go had returned to the path understanding tree. He squinted as if he was about to fall asleep. At the same time, the little girl Hua was sitting cross-legged next to Lord Go. The energy in her body surged unceasingly, and her aura seemed to boil. It looked like something was about to change. Nether King Erha sat at the dining table, while the three-eyed wild lion lay by his feet. Its face was filled with fear, and it was shivering. He had changed into a waiter's uniform. His body was covered in bruises. His fight with Emosa had left him with many wounds. There were some injuries that even with his recovery ability, it wasn't easy for him to recover from. Bufang went downstairs, entering the restaurant. Everybody's eyes were on him. Bufang's eyes were indifferent. He didn't feel uncomfortable under those gazes. Hades Era's eyes brightened. He hurried to wave at Bufang. Bufang, young man, these ingredients. Are you satisfied? Hades Era asked with a smile. Saint Daughter Ziyun was sitting next to him. Hades Era didn't know what to do with this woman. He couldn't care less. Bufang curiously looked at the three-eyed wild lion, the corners of his mouth twitching. The three-eyed wild lion was afraid of the Nether King, but it wasn't afraid of Bufang. Seeing a puny human looking at it like that, the three-eyed wild lion raised its body and roared. A terrifying pressure burst out of the three-eyed wild lion's body. Boom! He didn't care about that at all. Hades Era raised his hand, slapping the lion's head. Why are you barking? Lie down, said Hades Era. The three-eyed wild lion crouched on the ground, shivering in fear. As a spirit beast, the three-eyed wild lion's senses were very sharp. It could clearly feel the murderous aura from the Nether King's body. If he didn't listen to him, Hades Era could kill him with one slap. He didn't want to die, so he was obedient. The ingredients are good. I'll keep them. 5 spicy strips in exchange, said Bufang. Hades was bewildered. A moment later, he faced the sky and laughed. He covered half of his face with one hand. With a slap, Nether King Erha slammed his hand on the table, saying, Deal. Nether King Erha's eyes shone brightly. He seemed to have found a good way to get spicy strips. It turned out there was such a thing. Why did he find it so late? However, while Hades was laughing in the restaurant, the sky outside the restaurant changed. The hidden dragon continent had changed. Chapter 839. The weather had changed. In just a blink of an eye, the hidden dragon continent's sky had changed. The clear sky instantly became gloomy. Rumbling sounds echoed unceasingly. In the gloomy sky, blood dots could be seen. In just a blink of an eye, the weather had plunged into deep winter. The air had become extremely cold and desolate. In the gloomy sky, thunder and lightning rolled. Thunder and lightning roared. It was snowing. It was snowing in the sky. Blood-colored snowflakes drifted down from the sky, swaying in the air and gently fluttering in the air. It wasn't just one area that was like this. No matter which corner of the continent it was, the weather had changed. Blood-colored snowflakes fell on their palms. Some people were bewildered. They stood at their spots, extending their palms. Blood-colored snowflakes fell on their palms. That kind of soft feeling was intoxicating. The snowflakes melted, turning into blood water that flowed down. The blood water had a thick stench, which seemed to contaminate the entire continent with the smell of blood. Many people were a little frightened. They didn't know if their actions had enraged the god. Thus, they started to worship, kneel, and pray for the god's forgiveness. Some thought that the continent's doomsday had come. While they were crazy, they started to take revenge. In short, this blood-colored snowflake had broken the order of the entire hidden dragon continent at this moment. At this moment, people's fear were displayed vividly. The commotion swept across the entire continent. In some places, powerful forces were crazily suppressing them. In some places, because they couldn't suppress them, riots broke out. In some places, some people were stirring up trouble in just a blink of an eye. Complaints were everywhere. And in the hidden dragon royal court, everybody was dumbstruck. Looking at the blood-colored snowflake that had scattered the entire continent, their eyes were filled with disbelief. blood-colored snowflake was a strange phenomenon in the sky. A big disaster was about to happen, all the Holy Lands were stirred up. Heavenly Secret Holy Land. A figure wearing a long white robe stood on the peak of the Heavenly Secret Peak. His robe was embroidered with gold, which made him look calm and simple. That figure had deep eyes, his long hair fluttering. Heaven's secret peak was extremely tall, and there were strange and jagged rocks on it. Many of the strange rocks were piled up together, forming a sinister formation. It was a mysterious place. The figure looked into the distance, at the churning thunderclouds and the fluttering blood-colored snow in the sky. He couldn't help but sigh. A holy master has fallen. The Saint Sovereign fell, and the world changed. The snow turned into blood, and the entire world was filled with sorrow. If an expert reached the limit of this world, he or she would be connected to the heavenly Tao. Once he or she died, the heavenly Tao would weep for him, and a strange phenomenon would appear. In the hidden dragon continent, the sacred lord of each holy land was an existence connected to the way of heaven. The sacred lord was already the top expert of this world. Since the Saint Sovereign had fallen, the Great Path's principle of the hidden dragon continent would react. Blood snow fluttered. The man standing on the heavenly secret peak had a deep gaze and his face was filled with sorrow. A sacred lord had fallen, and heaven and earth mourned. Now, the only thing that could cause a holy lord-level powerhouse to perish was the distant Heaven Pass tribulation. In the hidden dragon Heaven Pass, a terrifying war was taking place. It was a war between the hidden dragon continent and the invaders. The heavenly star-catcher disk was destroyed, and the Great Path was incomplete. Some peerless experts had taken action, tearing the bloody hole in the Great Path and weakening it. They couldn't stop the Netherworld experts from invading. The Saint Sovereigns of the Holy Lands stayed in the Heaven Pass all year round. Of course, they did their best to protect this world. They fought until they died. Sighing again, the man's eyes looked begrudging. All of a sudden, the man's eyes moved. His eyes scanned around, falling on the heavenly secret peak. There, Emoluji was climbing to the peak, his face numb. Rumble! Boom! A thunderclap cracked the sky. It caused the entire region to turn bright. Emoluji lifted his head and saw the figure on the heavenly secret peak, which was illuminated by the lightning bolts. Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign Emoluji's eyes were complicated. The Saint Sovereign, who had been missing for a long time, had returned. However, he couldn't bring the Saintess back in one piece. Granny Emo didn't survive either. With sorrow, Emoluji didn't use his cultivation base. Like an ordinary person, he climbed to the top of the heavenly secret peak. It was very difficult and dangerous. However, it made Emoluji's heart calm down. Finally, Emoluji climbed to the peak, standing in front of the heavenly secret Saint Sovereign. The vague image in his memory finally became clear. The heavenly secret Saint Sovereign's face became more and more familiar. Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign. Emotianji, you finally came back? Emoluji looked at the heavenly secret Saint Sovereign, his face indifferent. However, his words were full of indifference. This strange yet familiar face touched his heart. However, when he remembered that this person had left for dozens of years, the touch in Emoluji's heart turned cold. Emotianji looked at Emoluji, his eyes complicated. Looking at Emoluji, who looked more and more like him, he sighed. Child, your father is back. The heavenly secret Saint Sovereign had traveled the endless sea to investigate for the hidden dragon royal court. He had been gone for dozens of years. Emoluji had changed from a 3-year-old child to a handsome man today. Unfortunately, when Emotianji returned, the entire world had changed. You're not my father. You're just the heavenly secret Saint Sovereign. Emoluji's face was cold. Granny Emo is dead. The heavenly star-catcher disk is destroyed. And the heavenly secret saintess is severely wounded. She's about to die, said Emoluji. Emotianji clasped his hands, quietly listening to Emoluji. Compared to Emoluji, he was more experienced and mature. What you've said. I know. Granny Mo's time is up. On the day of her death, she protected the heavenly secret Holy Land. She sent the heavenly secret Saintess away to protect the heavenly star catcher disk. However, Granny Mo is old. She can't see many things clearly anymore, said Mo Tianji. Granny Mo was about to die. Mo Tianji was telling Emoluji that Granny Mo's death was worth it. Granny Mo had raised Emoluji. The grief in his heart burst out uncontrollably. He kneeled on the ground and cried. He hated that his cultivation base was weak. He hated that he was useless. Mo Tianji sighed. He took a step forward, raised his hand, and rubbed Emoluji's head. It's okay. Father is back. As long as Father is still alive, the heavenly secret Holy Land will not be destroyed by those bastards from the netherworld. Your Highness the Saintess, Father will go there personally. We must bring the Saintess back. You don't need to cry. You've done well. The heavenly secret Saint Sovereign's voice was gentle, as if he could comfort Emoluji. Emoluji was a little tired. Instantly, his eyelids became heavy. He couldn't help but close his eyes. He lay on the ground, breathing evenly. Mo Tianji held Emoluji's body. Emoluji slept like a child. Mo Tianji took a step forward. His body floated in the air, slowly walking toward the heavenly secret main hall. Bufang exhaled softly, and Bai Qi came out of his mouth. He curled up on the chair, looking at the big snowflakes fluttering in the sky. This snow was blood red, which made Bufang feel strange. The temperature dropped because it was deep into winter. Bufang wore a velvet robe. He curled up on the chair, feeling warm. It was warm inside the restaurant. Under the path understanding tree, Lord Go was sleeping with his eyes closed. He was holding a glass of iced plum juice, enjoying it. Yu and Hua, one big and one small, were sitting on the deck of the netherworld ship. Their white legs dangled as they held the plum juice, gently nibbling on it. Chu Chongqing pulled a chair and sat next to Bufang. His long silver hair fanned out, making him look handsome. This day changes too fast. Owner Bu, it's so cold today. Let's close the restaurant early. Chu Chongqing turned his head to look at Bufang, smiling. Bufang looked at Chu Chongqing, but he didn't say anything. Chu Chongqing gave a dry laugh. Snowflakes fell, piling up in front of the restaurant. The blood-colored snow made people feel even colder and colder. The Valley of Gluttony had started to repair itself, and it seemed to be in order. Although the damage this time was serious, with the previous experience, the repair process was smooth. The long street of the Valley of Gluttony was paved, and many restaurants and inns were built on both sides. The Phoenix Pavilion opposite the Taotai restaurant was also fully restored. However, the number of customers had decreased a lot. Because of the sudden change and the cold, blood-colored snow, the business today was terrible. Many restaurants had closed early, huddling around their stoves to keep warm. Mu Cheng was wearing a thick fur coat and a short skirt. Her white, tender legs were exposed in the air, which made her look somewhat enchanting. She strode toward Owner Bu's Taotai restaurant with her buttocks swaying. Noodle King Ouyang Chinfeng also clasped his hands, walking toward the restaurant. Many chefs had come to the restaurant to chat with Bufang. These days, because business wasn't good, people were idle. Whenever they had time, they would gather and chat. When they came to the restaurant, they would order an ice heart jade urn wine and a side dish. They would drink and chat. When Renshang had given up his bamboo flask of wine, running to Bufang's restaurant. After comparing, he found that the ice heart jade urn wine was much better. After a long time, today's business hours were over. Bufang also shooed people out of the door. He stretched his body, opened his fur coat, and slowly walked toward the kitchen. He closed the wooden door, which squeaked with the aura of time. He stepped onto the stairs, and with a creaking sound, he arrived at the corridor. He pushed open the door to his room. Inside the room, starlight twinkled. The heavenly secret saintess, Yen, was lying on the bed. Under the starlight, her beautiful face looked somewhat poignant. Her poignant beauty had a sense of serenity. This woman, she still hadn't woken up? Bufang furrowed his brows. He walked to the bed, extending his hand. His long, white fingers opened Yan's eyelids, looking at her pupils. He nodded in agreement, but he still did not know when this woman would wake up. Bufang gently exhaled. Taking off his fur coat, he hung it on the hanger in the room. He rubbed his hair and walked toward the bathroom. Not long after, the sound of running water could be heard from the bathroom. Chapter 840. Suddenly Yen was lying on the bed, her face pale, but her breathing was steady. She rubbed her wet hair, letting it fall down her face. Yan's long eyelashes slightly trembled. Bufang's eyes were a little blurred. After thinking for a while, he stood up. Heavenly Spring Holy Land Prison, Acheron Helplessness Wine. Using a leaf of Acheron grass at the source of the Acheron River and the flower of helplessness from the Bridge of Helplessness as the main ingredient. Using the Scattered Star Wine brewing method to brew it, nourishing it with mental energy for 81 months. He looked at the ceiling. Above his head was his room. Yen was lying on her own bed in her own room. Brewing Acheron Helplessness Wine should be Bufang's next major dish research. Amethyst Elder had returned. Heavenly Spring Holy Land. If someone stood there and stretched out their hand, they would feel the real sensation of those grains floating on their palm. Their habits were not much different from humans. No one would have thought that a saint sovereign-level existence would fall. This was simply too frightening. He walked to the stove. Bufang walked out of the bathroom, gently exhaling. He shook his head, and instantly, water splashed everywhere. All the disciples had a sorrowful look on their faces. It wasn't because of anything else, but because their saint sovereign had fallen. The starlight shrouded Yen. Moreover, it covered Yen's body, making her look extremely holy and pure. His mind slightly calmed down, then he began to inquire about the brewing method of Acheron helplessness that the system had provided him. If Bufang were here, he would definitely be surprised to see this scene. These years, the royal court had been capturing netherworld creatures on the continent. Other than those who were killed on the spot, there were also many netherworld creatures imprisoned in the prison. Walking out of the room, Chu Chongqing was naked, his silver hair still dripping with water. He also saw Bufang, his face a little playful. Numerous disciples swarmed in, and in an instant, the dungeon was packed to the brim. After a while, the sound of water disappeared, and the bathroom door opened. Immediately, hot air gushed out. Many netherworld creatures were imprisoned in the prison. After a while, Bufang couldn't help but raise his head. This made many people slightly stunned. They did not think that the Amethyst Elder would actually make such a decision. Bufang gave Chu Chongqing a sidelong glance, as if he was rolling his eyes. The sound of water splashing, miserable howls reverberated throughout the entire Heavenly Spring holy grounds, causing people's scalps to go numb. Xiaopi's entire body was covered in gold, but the gold was speckled. Bufang, on the other hand, was somewhat stunned. Many disciples didn't reject his order. The fall of the Saint Lord had made their resentment toward the netherworld creatures reach its peak. He still had his own restaurant in the Light Wind Empire. That was the place where his dream began. Everything seemed to be developing in a bad direction. Many people's hearts trembled. The system's solemn and earnest voice rang out. The hidden dragon continent's sky changed. Blood-colored snowflakes floated down, landing on their hands and melting, turning into a thick, bloody aura. This was the first time Bufang had completely seen the brewing method of Acheron's helplessness wine. It was the first time he realized that brewing this wine required a unique brewing method. Once it declined, it would turn into a fat piece of meat in the eyes of many factions, a target for carving up. Did the netherworld creatures really want to invade the hidden dragon continent? Bufang's hair was wet, and he was wiping it with a white towel. He was wearing a green robe. He wore a green robe, and the straps on his robe were slightly closed. They wanted to slaughter the netherworld creatures in the Valley of Gluttony. This woman seemed to be waking up. This was different from the acheron grass and the flower of helplessness provided by the system. Ignoring Chu Chongqing's teasing, Bufang walked out of the restaurant and went to the kitchen downstairs. Bufang narrowed his eyes. A moment later, he calmed his mind and began to understand the brewing method. The corners of his mouth curled into a devilish smile as he spoke. Meanwhile, the heavenly spring Holy Land's disciples came with thick murderous aura. Looking at the crazed faces of those disciples, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Amethyst Elder stood on a tall building with his hands clasped behind his back. His purple robe fluttered in the wind as he indifferently looked into the distance. Bufang's face was emotionless. Like a flood, the heavenly spring Holy Land's disciples, led by a sect master-level existence, walked out of the Holy Land, heading to different places on the continent. In a dark room, seeing in Aiyan a familiar face, Bufang couldn't help but think of the Light Wind Empire. Outside the Valley of Gluttony, some people wore savage expressions as they headed to the places marked with the netherworld creatures. The one-leaf acheron grass grew from the source, so the spirit energy and energy it contained were many times stronger than the ordinary acheron grass. At that time, it could decline just like the Valley of Gluttony. It was the sorrow of the great path's principle toward the death of a saint sovereign. Many disciples wore a crazed face as they swarmed toward the Valley of Gluttony. Bufang rubbed his chin. In this long and lonely night, Bufang thought he should find something to do. And the scattered star wine brewing method needed an Aiyan's heavenly star-catcher disc. Dazzling stars were moving around. Those stars weren't radiant, but they were tangible objects. They looked like grains of stars floating in the air. Those Holy Land disciples were filled with righteous indignation. Their eyes were bloodshot. Some of them went to the dungeons of other Holy Lands. They needed to vent their anger, and they vented their anger on the netherworld creatures. However, many of them were indignant because their saint sovereign had fallen. It was a big blow to the entire Holy Land. In just a blink of an eye, all the Holy Land disciples started to attack the netherworld creatures in the dungeons. Those disciples roared crazily, dashing in every direction. The heavenly spring saint sovereign had fallen in the hidden dragon heaven pass. Amethyst Elder didn't come, but the heavenly spring Holy Land's disciples were seething with anger. Some of them were strong. After the Holy Land's failed expedition, they allowed them to live, as long as they didn't do anything to harm the natives of the continent. Many experts had gone to attack them, but they returned empty-handed. Moreover, the Heaven Pass tribulation was approaching. Thus, many people lost interest in the netherworld creatures. As for the Yellow Spring Helplessness wine, he had gone to the earth prison of the netherworld to pick the yellow spring grass and the flower of helplessness. Xiaobai stood at the entrance of the restaurant. Xiaopi, who used to sit on Xiaobai's head, was nowhere to be found. It seemed he needed to find a way to deal with the acheron helplessness wine. Bufang's eyes scanned the place for a while. Walking out of the kitchen, he entered the restaurant and saw Xiaopi, who was sitting on Hua's head in the distance. It carried thick steam, drifting in the air. Walking to the window, he leaned against it. Through the transparent glass, he looked at the blood-colored snowflakes falling from the sky. His eyes were a little empty. There are netherworld creatures in the Valley of Gluttony. Those bastards should die. Kill them. Take revenge for the Saint Sovereign. The blood-colored snowflakes are reminding us that we can't be weak anymore. The most important thing was, Mo Yi had destroyed the heavenly star-catcher disc. How could he make the new wine? Bufang was a little depressed. He rubbed his wet hair, exhaling. He was a little helpless and speechless. A disciple was holding a long spear. When he saw the netherworld creature, he roared and thrusted his spear, piercing through the netherworld creature. The Saint Sovereign was one of the reasons why the Heavenly Spring Holy Land could still be the main force of the hidden dragon royal court. Without the Saint Sovereign, the Holy Land lost its competitiveness with the other Holy Land. The disciples of the Holy Lands walked out of the dungeon with blood all over their bodies. The netherworld creatures in the dungeon were all killed. Their eyes were filled with madness. Feeling the blood-colored snowflakes falling from the sky, they all roared crazily. Many disciples of the heavenly secret Holy Land came with righteous indignation. No matter how long that woman slept, Bufang could only spend the night in the kitchen. Kill all netherworld creatures. Those bastards of the netherworld should all die. Their saintess was detained in the Valley of Gluttony. The disciples of the heavenly secret Holy Land were indignant, so they came to take her away. It seemed like a little vitality was quietly blooming. Amethyst Elder came back with wounds all over his body. He wasn't a holy saint, but he wasn't weaker than one. The Saint Sovereign had fallen, and the holy saint's whereabouts were unknown. Amethyst Elder had to return early. "Old Boo, are you going to spend the lonely night in the kitchen again?" A terrifying massacre swept across the area. The heavenly spring Holy Land was in an uproar. The disciples traveled through the night. Tilting his head, he looked at Yen, who was lying quietly on the bed. Bufang stood at his spot for a while. After wiping the water stains, he hung the towel on the rack. He looked at the sleeping Yen one more time. Sighing, he turned around and walked out of the room. A storm once again swept over the Valley of Gluttony. Those seemed to be real stars. However, today, because a Saint Sovereign had fallen in the Heaven Pass, the entire heavenly spring Holy Land went crazy. After the sun rose, did the doomsday of the hidden dragon continent come? Many disciples were shivering. A wave of fear spread from the bottom of their hearts. It was the fear of the future. The news of the netherworld creatures in the Valley of Gluttony had spread to the entire hidden dragon royal court. The entire heavenly spring Holy Land was shrouded in a deathly aura. Pulling the corners of his mouth, Bufang turned around, returning to the kitchen. What the hell was this scattered star wine brewing method? There were many memories of Bufang. He had left the Light Wind Empire for a long time. He didn't know how the restaurant there had developed. He didn't know if the cooking skills of the two apprentices in Fong Fong's little store had improved. For example, they could research new dishes. The deathly aura that was originally covering his face also quickly faded away. However, as soon as Amethyst Elder returned, the first order he gave was to gather all the disciples of the heavenly spring Holy Land and start to clean up the netherworld creatures on the continent. One by one, the starlight particles rapidly drilled into her brain. The disciples of the heavenly spring Holy Land vented their anger on the netherworld creatures. In fact, on the continent, there were many netherworld creatures who lived in seclusion among the humans. They started to crazily slaughter the netherworld creatures just to offer sacrifices to the Saint Sovereign. Chapter 841. The blood-colored snow fluttering in the sky seemed to have thinned. The sky was bright. After a night of blood snow, the ground was covered with a layer of blood-colored cotton clothes. The cotton clothes were thick and cold, and the air became cold in just a blink of an eye. Stepping on it, one would sink deep into the ground. Squeaking sounds could be heard, rubbing one's eardrums. The dark clouds were hazy, and the faint smell of blood diffused. The sun seemed to be completely covered, and not a single beam of sunlight could be seen. The snow that had fallen for a night seemed to be about to stop. The heavy snow had also turned into light snow. Squeaking sounds echoed. The restaurants on both sides of the long street of the Valley of Gluttony opened their doors. Some waiters walked out of their restaurants, holding brooms and sweeping the snow in front of their doors. The snow that had fallen for a night had blocked the doors. As soon as the doors were pushed open, the snow rolled in. Chu Chongsheng got up. His silver hair was as messy as a chicken's nest. He rubbed his hair and went downstairs. The temperature had dropped, but to a cultivator at his level, it was nothing. Thus, Chu Chongqing wore silk pajamas with his chest exposed. He went downstairs. Bufang walked out of the kitchen. Bufang was wearing a striped red and white vermilion robe. His sleeves were rolled up, and he was holding a broom. As soon as he saw Chu Chongqing, he threw the broom to him. Chu Chongqing instinctively caught it. "You're awake? If you're awake, go and sweep the snow," said Bufang. "Sweep what snow? I'm a waitress, not a servant." Chu Chongqing pulled out a chair and sat on it. He supported his chin with one hand, looking at Bufang. His hair cascaded and his eyes were blurry. Bufang looked at him, the corners of his mouth rising. "Do you want me to sweep the snow?" said Bufang casually. Then, Bufang turned around and entered the kitchen. He was going to cook for Lord Go and you. Chu Chongqing felt helpless. Looking at Bufang, who had turned around and left, he could only force a smile and shake his head. Owner Bu was jealous of his good looks. Grabbing the broom, Chu Chongqing walked to the door of the restaurant. With a creak, he opened the wooden door. Immediately, a rumbling sound echoed. Thick snow poured in from the door, covering Chu Chongqing and almost burying him alive. Chu Chongqing craned his neck, his face begrudging. No wonder Bufang asked him to sweep the snow. If he didn't sweep the snow, the customers wouldn't be able to come to the restaurant to eat. Hualala, hualala. Thus, Chu Chongqing had no choice but to sweep the snow. In a short while, a large empty space was cleared in front of the entrance. In the Phoenix Pavilion opposite, there were also a few waiters sweeping the snow while grunting. These fellows worked in full swing. Chu Chongqing glanced at the Phoenix Pavilion, then at the Taotai restaurant. It was really shabby. Even the restaurant needed him, a waiter, to sweep the snow. He was so upset. "Oh, what a coincidence! You guys are also sweeping the snow." However, Chu Chongqing was just sad for a while. Then, he continued to sweep the snow. He even had time to lift his head to greet the waiters who were sweeping the snow. Of course, those waiters knew Chu Chongqing. After all, Chu Chongqing had shown his invincible power several days ago. He had fought a bloody demon, which had left a deep impression on them. Thus, those waiters solemnly grabbed the broom, bowing to Chu Chongqing respectfully. Chu Chongqing's smile almost bloomed on his face. He held the broom in one hand and waved the other. "Young people are so energetic. Not bad, not bad. The future of the Valley of Gluttony depends on you guys. Work hard to sweep the snow." Inside the restaurant, a thick aroma arose. Bufang walked out of the kitchen, holding a steaming plate of sweet and sour ribs in his hand. Lord Go, who was resting under the path understanding tree, opened his eyes wide when he smelled the sweet and sour ribs. He laid on the dining table, placing his paws on the table, sticking out his tongue excitedly. Yu and Hua did the same. They lay on the table, waiting for Bufang's dish. "Blackie, it's time to eat. Your sweet and sour dragon ribs." Bufang placed the plate of sweet and sour dragon ribs in front of Blackie. The thick aroma diffused, making Lord Go close his eyes. Sweet and sour dragon ribs. That kid Bufang really kept his word. Munch, munch, munch. Looking at Bufang with satisfaction, Lord Go started to gobble up the food on the porcelain plate. He ate noisily, his tail wagging. Bufang turned around and entered the kitchen. Shortly after, he walked out. He held two dishes in his hands. One was the dragon blood rice for you, and the other was for Hua. Their eyes brightened. They followed Blackie's example and started to eat. Chu Chongqing was still sweeping the snow outside the door. When he had the time, he would chat with the worker in front of him, praising him for being the future of the Valley of Gluttony. Everything seemed so peaceful and peaceful. All of a sudden clamors arose outside the Valley of Gluttony. Figures crazily flooded the long street of the Gluttony God City. They were the disciples of the Holy Land. The guards of the Valley of Gluttony couldn't stop them. As soon as those disciples entered the Gluttony God City, they swarmed toward the Taotai restaurant. The snow on the long street was messy, and footprints could be seen on it. Those people were divided into two groups. One group wore the robes of the heavenly secret Holy Land, their faces filled with righteous indignation. When the people of the heavenly secret Holy Land heard that the owner of the restaurant had detained their saintess, they weren't happy. The saintess was the symbol of the Holy Land. How could they let a man take her away? Thus, the disciples of the heavenly secret Holy Land came to take back their saintess. The other group was different. They were from the heavenly spring Holy Land. Their bodies emitted a thick murderous aura. Their goal was to kill all the netherworld creatures in the hidden dragon continent to take revenge for their saint sovereign. During the Heaven Pass tribulation, the heavenly spring saint sovereign was killed by the netherworld creatures, which made the heaven and earth mourn. This made the disciples of the heavenly spring Holy Land crazy. When people were crazy, they would do crazy things. And at this time, when Amethyst Elder shouted to clean up the netherworld creatures in the continent, it was exactly what those disciples wanted. It gave them a place to vent their anger, and they started to kill. On the continent, there were many places where the netherworld creatures lived in seclusion. Tragedies happened there. Some netherworld creatures just wanted to live in peace, but they were still caught by the disciples of the Holy Lands. They died tragically. Some netherworld creatures were no different from humans, but they were still besieged by the disciples of the Holy Lands. Blood splashed everywhere. The troops that Amethyst Elder had built were filled with murderous intent. They started to clean up the netherworld creatures in the continent. Tragedies happened one after another. In the Valley of Gluttony, many disciples of the heavenly spring Holy Land gathered. These disciples were really crazy. They knew that there was a netherworld creature in the Tautai restaurant. However, they heard that the netherworld creature was really strong. It was so strong that even a half-step divine soul realm expert couldn't defeat it. It meant that the netherworld creature could be in existence at the heavenly ethereal realm. If it was a heavenly ethereal realm expert, then it deserved to die. Thus, the sect master-level existences of the heavenly spring Holy Land held the god-slaying weapons and went to the Valley of Gluttony. The heavenly secret Holy Land and the heavenly spring Holy Land's troops met outside the Valley of Gluttony. Both sides were surprised. However, this time they had the same goal, so they didn't cause a ruckus. Chu Chongqing stopped sweeping the snow. On both sides of the restaurant, the blood-colored snow piled up into a small hill. He opened up an empty space in front of the restaurant. All of a sudden, there was a loud bang. The small mountain of snow instantly exploded and fell down, causing the snow to once again fill the empty space in front of the restaurant. Chu Chongqing, who had just returned to the restaurant and was about to taste Ownerbu's cooking, froze. Facing such immoral behavior, he really wanted to open his mouth and curse. However, in the end, he didn't curse. Or rather, he didn't have the time to curse. A large group of people swarmed in, blocking the entrance of the restaurant so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. There were two groups of people, which made Chu Chongqing a little dumbstruck. The disciples of the heavenly spring Holy Land and the heavenly secret Holy Land. What are they doing? Chu Chongqing frowned suspiciously, looking at the group of people. The leaders of the heavenly secret Holy Land and the heavenly spring Holy Land were all at the sect master level. The pressure of the divine spirit realm emitted from their bodies made people's faces slightly change. They felt a little scared. Oh, it's really lively today. So many people came to the restaurant to eat? Chu Chongqing held the broom, smiling. The sect master level existence swept his cold eyes through Chu Chongqing and said, "Eat? Eat your sister's food. Hand over our saintess. You dare to kidnap our heavenly secret Holy Land's saintess. You really have a wicked heart." The one who said those words was the sect master-level existence of the heavenly secret Holy Land. This sect master-level existence really wanted to save the saintess. After all, in the previous battle, he didn't have the ability to save Granny Mo. Today, Hearing that the saintess, whom Granny Mo favored, was imprisoned, of course, he crazily came here. However, the experts of the Heavenly Spring Holy Land were much more direct. Hand over the netherworld creature. Those who protect her deserve to die 10,000 times. All the disciples of the Heavenly Spring Holy Land shouted the same words, causing many people's faces to slightly change. Bufang walked out of the kitchen, using a clean white cloth to wipe the water on his hand. His face was indifferent. He walked to the door, pulled out a chair, and curled up on it. His eyes scanned the crowd, saying, "Go back to where you came from. Since you're not here to eat, please leave." Otherwise, to the troublemakers, Xiao Bai, who was standing at the kitchen door in a daze, suddenly moved a few steps, appearing behind Bufang. He mechanically opened his mouth and said, "Troublemakers, you will be stripped as an example to others." Stripped? Let's see who dares. We have so many people here. Why don't you King strip us? The sect master level existences of the heavenly secret Holy Land all had red eyes. Bufang's restaurant was really too much. What was wrong with them wanting to take the heavenly secret saintess away? The heavenly secret saintess originally belonged to the heavenly secret Holy Land. Blackie and you, on the other hand, were very calm. After they had finished all the food on their plates, a man and a dog exhaled a breath of white air. They turned their heads to look at the group of Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples, who were clamoring to kill the Tautai creature outside the restaurant. Lord Dog paid no attention to those clamors. Striding with graceful cat-like steps, he returned to the path understanding tree. Lying under the tree, he fell into a deep sleep. Hua leaned against Lord Go, squinting. He was holding a cup of sour plum juice, happily drinking it. She looked at the group of Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples in front of the restaurant as if they were idiots. Kill these netherworld creatures and take revenge for the Saint's sovereign. One of them waved the god-slaying weapon in his hand and roared. In the next instant, the Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples were instantly enraged. They charged toward the restaurant. Their faces were filled with madness as they waved their weapons. The people of the Heavenly Secret Holy Land were so scared that they retreated to the side. These people from the Heavenly Spring Holy Land were too terrifying. Bufang sat on his chair, his face cold as he looked at the group of Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples, who were shouting to kill them. A trace of anger flashed across his face. A group of unreasonable people. Xiao Bai, strip them and throw them out. Buzz, as soon as Bufang's words fell, Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes changed. In the next instant a dazzling light shone. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. Chapter 842. Troublemakers would be stripped as an example to others. This sentence had almost become Xiao Bai's catchphrase. When Nethery and the others heard Whitey's words, the corners of their mouths involuntarily curled up. They playfully looked at the group of indignant Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples. The sect master-level existence's eyes emitted a cold intent. Xiao Bai's body changed. His smooth skin suddenly had sharp points growing out, covering Xiao Bai's body, making Xiao Bai look ferocious and terrifying. Xiao Bai's eyes locked on the god-slaying weapons in the hands of the Heavenly Spring Holy Land's experts. These god-slaying weapons weren't attractive to Xiao Bai anymore. Compared to the god-slaying weapons Xiao Bai had swallowed, these god-slaying weapons weren't of a high level. They weren't attractive to Xiao Bai at all. Stomping his foot, Xiao Bai's figure flashed like a phantom. Xiao Bai had evolved to his current level, and his power was extremely intimidating. He could be compared to an existence at the divine spirit realm. Ordinary sect master-level existences weren't his opponent. An enraged disciple held a long spear in his hand as he dashed over. The flame of anger in his eyes burned fiercely as he waved his long spear at Bufang's back. He thought that anyone who stopped them from killing the netherworld's creatures deserved to die. Bufang had stopped them, so Bufang deserved to die. The berserk intent was extremely dense, almost reaching a level that made people shudder. However, before the spear could reach Bufang, it was caught by a fan-like hand. Bufang's figure halted. He slowly turned around, looking at that person. Crack! A crisp sound echoed. Xiao Bai's white mechanical eyes had black dots of light floating around. His hand exerted force, instantly breaking the long spear. Boom! An oppressive force suddenly exploded. The Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciple instantly felt an enormous pressure on his body. His clothes were instantly torn apart, turning into rags that filled the sky. Then, he fell out of the restaurant and landed on the ground outside. The disciples of the Holy Land were startled, and with a whoosh, they all retreated out of a large pit. Looking at that brother who was stripped naked, they couldn't help but narrow their eyes. How dare you! How dare you! The sect master-level existence of the Heavenly Spring Holy Land was enraged. With a roar, a terrifying aura burst forth from his body. Bufang turned around and looked indifferently at this sect master-level existence. You're making trouble here? Bufang tilted his head and twitched the corner of his mouth. The sect master's eyes widened in anger. His figure fiercely charged forward, bringing with him a terrifying wave of air and pressure as he charged forward. The metal wings on Xiao Bai's back resounded, and in the next instant, they spread open. His fan-like palm suddenly rose up and collided with the sect master-level existence. An invisible energy ripple spread out, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. The Heavenly Spring Holy Land's sect master-level existence instantly retreated several steps. His eyes were a little frightened as he looked at Xiao Bai. He didn't think that this iron puppet could be that strong. Boom! Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes sparkled with a cold light. A moment later, his stomach spun, and a black hole emerged. From that black hole, a red-hot iron stick flew out. It was covered with patterns. Xiao Bai grabbed the war god's stick, and his aura changed instantly. He fiercely thrust the stick forward. The sect master-level existence roared, raising a sword in his hand. Sword energy crisscrossed, stabbing toward the war god's stick. It was a god-slaying sword with unparalleled power. It collided with the war god's stick. A terrifying pressure expanded. However, shortly after, the sect master-level existence felt his heart shiver. He couldn't resist the terrifying power from the war god's stick. His entire body was blown away in just a blink of an eye. Buzz, the sect master-level existence wanted to fly out of the restaurant. However, Xiao Bai's war god's stick swept horizontally, his body approaching rapidly. A fan-like hand swung down at his head. The sect master expert roared, raising his hand to resist. However, Xiao Bai's close combat ability was really strong. How could the sect master-level existence resist? Without any power to resist, Xiao Bai grabbed him and pressed him to the ground. The war god's stick pressed on the sect master-level expert's waist. Let me go, you heretics who protect the netherworld creatures. The netherworld creatures have invaded the continent, bringing so many disasters to the continent. Even the Saint Sovereign has fallen. Why do you still want to protect them? Green veins bulged on the sect master-level existence's forehead as he roared with rage. Amethyst Elder will never forgive you. Xiao Bai, slap him, said Bufang, smirking. Boom. After listening to him, Xiao Bai didn't hesitate, slapping him. Instantly, the sect master-level existence's head was slapped to the ground. The restaurant's floor was really firm. Even with the body of a sect master-level existence, when his head hit the ground, it didn't break the floor. Instead, it smashed his own head. Blood splashed everywhere. The sect master was so enraged that he had gone crazy. He struggled and roared unceasingly. However, Xiao Bai's power was so great that he couldn't move at all. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled. A moment later, his fan-like palm pressed on the sect master's body. Swish! Everybody gawked and dropped their jaws. The naked disciple from the Holy Land, who had just crawled up from the ground, looked as though he was about to cry. Sure enough, this deranged iron puppet didn't even spare sect master level existences. Swish! Another crisp sound echoed. The sect master level existence was a little flustered. He felt that his lower body was a little cool. King cool? Let me go. Damn it. Boom. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes twinkled. He slapped him again. Thud. The sect master's head hit the ground one more time. The ground shook, and blood splashed. What kind of floor was this? Why was it so hard? This place was poisoned. He wanted to resist, but he couldn't. That sect master level existence could only shed tears of humiliation. In the end, Xiao Bai's war god stick flicked him, making a beautiful arc. His naked body flew away, landing on the ground outside. Thud. Blood and snow scattered on the ground. The Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples were completely bewildered. Fear appeared in their eyes. They stiffly twisted their necks, looking in Bu Fang's direction and White Yi's direction. Xiao Bai held the war god's stick with one hand. His fan-like palm rose. Crack! Crack! His fingers trembled, clenching into a fist. The disciples were chilled. They turned around, planning to run away. However, Xiao Bai's figure was like a phantom. He appeared in front of them, one in each hand. Swish! Pieces of cloth scattered everywhere. The ground was littered with pieces of clothes. The Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples screamed miserably, shedding tears of humiliation and fear. They fell, crashing on the ground. Figures piled on top of each other. So many naked bodies piled on top of each other. It was a ghastly sight. The Heavenly Secret Holy Land disciples stood outside the restaurant, looking at the naked figures flying out. They couldn't help but gawk in bewilderment. Gulping sounds arose, and their Adam's apple moved. They suddenly felt lucky that they weren't the ones who got in. The sect master-level existence of the Heavenly Secret Holy Land who had shouted before was also dumbstruck. What the F***ck? He really stripped all of them. Fortunately, he had only shouted. He wasn't the one who had actually stepped into the restaurant. The Heavenly Spring Holy Land's sect master wasn't weaker than him. However, he was thrown out miserably. His clothes were all ripped off, and he seemed to have experienced something inhumane. Thinking about it, he felt a little scared. So scared. Thinking about that, the sect master-level existence was even more panicked. Not only him, but the other Heavenly Secret Holy Land disciples were also flustered. If even a man experienced such a miserable stripping, what would happen to Her Highness the Saintess? In a restaurant that liked to strip people's clothes, the Saintess had to endure a lot of grievances. It seemed like they had to report to the Holy Saint Sovereign and ask him to save their Saintess. As for them, it seemed like even if all of them attacked, they wouldn't be able to save the Saintess. Thus, they shouldn't be impulsive. The god-slaying weapons were caught one by one. Xiao Bai held the war god's stick in one hand, standing in front of the restaurant. The black hole in his stomach floated, and the confiscated god-slaying weapons were shoved into Xiao Bai's stomach. Cracking sounds that made people's hair stand on end arose. Then, those god-slaying weapons were smashed into smithereens. The Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples clutched their lower bodies and crawled up from the ground, their faces filled with fear. That iron puppet not only liked to strip people's clothes, but it also liked to eat weapons. How could there be such a strange existence in this world? You dare to protect the netherworld creatures. You will regret it sooner or later. The sect master-level existence of the Heavenly Spring Holy Land roared angrily. However, his roar came to an abrupt halt. The war god's stick extended, stopping in front of the Heavenly Spring Holy Land's sect master-level expert's face. The strong wind it brought made the sect master's pores shrink. Crack! Crack! Along with a miserable howl, the Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciple who attacked Bufang first had his hands smashed by the war god's stick, turning into a mist of blood. Get lost! After punishing that disciple, Bufang impatiently waved his hand. His restaurant still needed to operate, and those naked people lying on the ground like that would affect his business. Since they couldn't beat them, the Heavenly Spring Holy Land disciples were so aggrieved. They glared at the Taotai restaurant, then ran away with their tails between their legs. After the Heavenly Spring Holy Land's disciples left, Bufang prepared to return to the restaurant. However, before he left, Bufang turned his head to look at the Heavenly Secret Holy Land disciples, who were gawking and dropping their jaws. All the disciples of the Holy Lands shuddered, and their faces were filled with terror. Was he going to rip off their clothes? Above the vault of heaven, a snowstorm suddenly rolled. The wind howled, and the blood snow, which had already become smaller, became fiercer. The wind blew and the snow fell. Swoosh! Bufang, who was about to return to the kitchen, paused. He turned his head to look, seeing a figure walking in the snow in the distance. That figure's robe fluttered, and his body seemed to emit a radiance. There was an invisible force around his body, causing the drifting snow to melt within an inch of his body, leaving no trace on the snow. The figure clasped his hands behind his back, walking slowly. His feet didn't leave any footprints on the snowy ground. That figure's eyes seemed to contain a myriad of stars. Starlight flowed within them, causing others to involuntarily sink into his gaze. The moment the Heavenly Secret Holy Land's disciples saw that figure, they became excited. It's the Saint Sovereign. The Saint Sovereign is here to pick up the Saintess? With the Saint Sovereign's help, the Saintess can be saved. She can escape from this damned demon's claws. The Heavenly Secret Holy Land's disciples were overjoyed, their faces filled with excitement. The Saint Sovereign and the Heavenly Secret Holy Land's Saint Sovereign were their spiritual pillars. The Saint Sovereign's cultivation was the highest in the royal court, and the Saint Sovereign was not weak either. The two of them supported the Heavenly Secret Holy Land, causing the entire Hidden Dragon royal court to be afraid of the Heavenly Secret Holy Land. With such a legendary existence coming, how could they not be excited? Crazy clothes stripping demon? Stripping in front of the Saint Sovereign? It was likely that the iron skin on his body would be peeled off. In front of the Saint Sovereign, besides the Saint Sovereign, everyone else was trash. The Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign, Mo Tianji, clasped his hands behind his back as he walked on the snow. Soon, he arrived in front of the restaurant. The entire world seemed to freeze at this moment. Mo Tianji's face was indifferent as he looked at Bufang. Bufang also looked at him, his face expressionless. At this moment, the air suddenly became quiet. Chapter 843. Heavenly Spring Holy Land. On a multicolored altar, Amethyst Elder stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His purple hair was like steel needles, piercing the void. Each strand of his hair was like a sharp sword, as though it could tear the world apart. His eyes were deep, like a pitch-black hole, swallowing everything around him. Amethyst Elder's body was extremely sturdy. The muscles on his body bulged, propping up the purple robe on his body. There was a surge of air in his nostrils, like a long snake rolling around. Not far from the altar, a beautiful woman slowly appeared. That beautiful woman looked at Amethyst Elder with a complicated gaze. Her face seemed to be filled with disappointment and sorrow. Amethyst Elder, do you really want to do this? The beautiful woman was graceful and elegant, but her face was filled with sorrow. Amethyst Elder clasped his hands behind his back. Under the wind, his figure seemed a little bleak. He slowly turned around, looking at the beautiful woman in the distance. He gently exhaled. His breath was like a sword tearing the void. I don't have any other choice. Amethyst Elder's eyes seemed to have a flash of pain. He struggled for a while, but in the end, his expression became firm and resolute. He looked at the beautiful woman, saying. The beautiful woman shook her head. Her eyes were still filled with disbelief. Don't worry about me. Just support me, okay? Amethyst Elder's figure flashed. He slowly floated down from the altar, landing beside the beautiful woman. He raised his hand, gently stroking the beautiful woman's face. "You're doing this. How can I support you? You killed Lord Saint Sovereign." A trace of fear flashed through the beautiful woman's eyes, and her voluptuous figure trembled slightly. Amethyst Elder's eyes were deep. He gently embraced the beautiful woman's body, causing her head to lean on his shoulder. "I definitely have my reasons for doing this. Please believe me, okay? I want to create a better future for you and Ziyun. I didn't kill the Saint Sovereign. With my cultivation, how could I kill the Saint Sovereign?" Rumble. Above the multicolored altar, the void began to twist. The beautiful woman's eyes were filled with fear as she looked at the void. "Go back first. Just trust me. I won't let you and Ziyun get hurt," Amethyst Elder said seriously. His palm gently patted the beautiful woman's shoulder, and in an instant, the beautiful woman's figure floated away. In the next instant, Amethyst Elder teleported back to the altar. A crack appeared in the sky above the altar. Then, the crack was torn open, and billowing black smoke emerged from it. Rumble. It was nether energy, extremely terrifying nether energy. The nether aura surged and turned into a sinister face of a demon. That demon had sharp fangs and a horn on its forehead. It emitted a terrifying aura that caused even space to tremble. It was extremely terrifying. Under that aura, Amethyst Elder felt his body tremble slightly. Narrowing his eyes, Amethyst Elder exhaled. The gigantic face looked at Amethyst Elder, and in the next instant, it let out a cackle. "Heavenly Spring Holy Lands Amethyst Elder. Since you're ready, then, come." Valley of Gluttony. The blood-colored snowflakes became bigger and bigger. The wind howled, creating a gale that was cold and bone-chilling. Gluttony God City. In front of the Tautai restaurant, the Heavenly Secret Holy Land's disciples looked at the Saint Sovereign, who was standing calmly in front of the restaurant with his hands clasped behind his back. The Saint Sovereign's body was glowing. His skin was like white jade, and it was filled with a mysterious aura. His eyes looked straight at Bufang, landing on Bufang's face. It seemed to carry a pressure that made the surrounding people hold their breath. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. The invisible pressure made everyone's hearts heavy. It was really a terrifying existence. Bufang's face was expressionless as he looked at him. He furrowed his brows. After looking at each other for a long time, the Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign Mo Tianji's face changed, and he revealed a smile. In that instant the entire world seemed to light up. "Worthy of being the person that Granny Mo values. Indeed extraordinary. To be able to look at me without fear, you do have some ability," Mo Tianji said with a smile, his face gentle. "Since the restaurant is open, it's open for business. Can I come in?" Mo Tianji said. Although his mouth was asking, his body had already entered the restaurant. Chu Changxing's heart trembled, and he made way for Mo Tianji. Even though he had ignited his divine flame, Chu Changxing felt that Mo Tianji was like a towering mountain. Even his divine flame was trembling. That kind of aura was really too terrifying. This Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign was much stronger than the ancient Jade Saint Sovereign they had met before. Everyone from the Heavenly Secret Holy Land was dumbfounded. They never imagined that the great Holy Saint Sovereign would not go to the owner Bu and ask for the Heavenly Secret Saintess back. Instead, he went to eat at his restaurant? The way the Lord Sage Master does things still doesn't follow common sense, huh? Bufang had some doubts about Mo Tianji. He had thought that Mo Tianji had come to cause trouble, but it turned out that he had come to eat. "Let's eat then. It's still business hours anyway. Come in. Look at the menu and tell the waiter what you want to eat," Bufang said. After speaking, he turned around and walked towards the kitchen. Mo Tianji was wearing a white robe, looking incomparably pure and holy. He sat at the table. Many disciples of the Heavenly Secret Holy Land followed him in. They found seats and sat down. Since there weren't enough seats, they squeezed at the door, looking inside. They thought that the great holy Saint Sovereign would bring the Saintess back for them. The great Holy Land wore a faint smile. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. His eyes turned to the menu. After scanning for a while, he ordered a heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Then, he didn't say anything. He quietly observed the restaurant. The other disciples of the heavenly secret Holy Land followed the great Holy Land's Saint Sovereign's example and ordered. Chu Chongsheng grinned. He didn't expect that his business would be so good today. He told Bu Fong what they had ordered. In the kitchen, Bu Fong had taken out the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. Accompanied by a dragon's roar, he began to process the ingredients. Clatter. The kitchen knife flew. He chopped the ingredients quickly, piling them in a porcelain bowl. Sizzle! 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 Shortly after, a thick aroma wafted out of the kitchen. In the cozy restaurant, an intoxicating aroma wafted out. Many people felt intoxicated. A commotion arose outside the door. Then, Hades' Era squeezed in. Beside Hades' Era was a woman wearing a long purple dress. Mo Tianji's eyes turned, landing on that woman. His eyes were deep. "Oh, Amethyst Elder's daughter," Mo Tianji said indifferently. Hades' Era narrowed his eyes. He didn't think that the restaurant would be so lively today. Moreover, the atmosphere in the restaurant seemed a little strange. He looked around, but he didn't see any empty seat. Only Saint Sovereign Mo Tianji had empty seat. Thus, Hades' Era pulled out a chair and sat down. "Oh, you recognize him? He's my follower." Hades' Era covered his face with one hand. He took out a spicy strip and put it in his mouth. Recently, Hades' Era had an abundance of spicy strips, so he was very proud. From time to time, he would take out a spicy strip and put it in his mouth. One spicy strip could last a day. It seemed that because he found a way to exchange for spicy strips from Bu Fong, Hades' Era was in high spirits. Saint Daughter Ziyun looked at Saint Sovereign Tianji with a little respect. As the daughter of the Amethyst Elder, she had naturally seen the legendary Saint Sovereign Tianji. Although this Saint Sovereign Tianji was mysterious and unfathomable, however, his father seemed to be very afraid of this existence. Saint Sovereign Tianji placed his hand on the table. His finger gently tapped on the table. The tapping sound made everyone in the restaurant feel nervous. Mo Tianji didn't pay much attention to Saint Daughter Ziyun. His eyes turned and landed on Hades' Era. He couldn't see through this person. His body was shrouded in a layer of fog, as if he was hiding the secrets of heaven. Even with his heavenly secret art, he couldn't see through him. It wasn't just Hades. Many people in the restaurant seemed to be hiding from the secrets of heaven. Bu Fong, Hades' Era, the black dog under the path understanding tree, and the girl in the golden dress. He recognized the netherworld woman, but the curse on her body seemed to have weakened a lot. It was really a mysterious restaurant. No wonder Granny Mo had asked the Saint Daughter to take refuge in this restaurant. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, Granny Mo's deduction seemed to be wrong. This restaurant couldn't protect the Saint Daughter. "The food is here," Chu Chongsheng said as he walked over with a steaming hot dish. The heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup was placed in a porcelain jar in front of Saint Sovereign Tianji. The Buddha on the wall seemed to come back to life. Its face was rosy, and it was full of joy. There was even water vapor rolling down from it. The corners of Saint Sovereign Tianji's mouth curled up as if he was interested. When he opened the lid, light shone everywhere. The rich fragrance made Saint Sovereign Tianji squint his eyes and take a deep breath. "It's really fragrant," Saint Sovereign Tianji sighed. He took the blue and white porcelain spoon, scooped up a spoonful of soup, and poured it into his mouth. The rich and fragrant soup entered his mouth, and instantly flowed down his throat. Mo Tianji couldn't help but exhale and smacked his lip. Really delicious. The surrounding heavenly secret Holy Land disciples were dumbstruck. What? Did the great Saint Sovereign really come to eat? Didn't he say he would bring the Saint Daughter away? However, after a moment of shock, the heavenly secret Holy Land disciples were attracted by the fragrance, and they all took a deep breath. Dish after dish was carried out from the kitchen. Steam rose up and filled the air above the restaurant. The people of the heavenly secret Holy Land immediately began to gorge themselves, eating happily. Bufang walked out of the kitchen and used a clean white cloth to wipe off the water on his hand. He pulled out an extra chair, sat down, and rested for a while. Saint Sovereign Tianji had just finished eating the heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The way he ate was so elegant. It's really delicious, really delicious. Mo Tianji praised in satisfaction. In the next instant, he put down his chopsticks and spoon. He looked at Bufang and his eyes instantly froze. Little guy, come, let's talk business now. Everyone who was wolfing down their food suddenly froze. Their gazes turned to Saint Sovereign Tianji with a serious expression. Was the Saint Sovereign finally going to talk business? Bufang's eyebrows twitched as he looked at Saint Sovereign Tianji. Speak. The corners of Mo Tianji's mouth instantly rose. I want to ask you, when will you send the Saint Daughter back? If you can't do it today, I will come back tomorrow to ask again. Everyone who had pricked up their ears in anticipation was instantly stunned. Their faces were filled with confusion. What did the Saint Sovereign mean? Damn it, I'll come back tomorrow and ask. Chapter 844. The crowd didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No one would have thought that the Saint Sovereign would say something like that. What did he mean by come back tomorrow and ask? As the Saint Sovereign of the heavenly secret Holy Land, shouldn't he be a little more stubborn and directly bring the Saintess back? Bufang was also slightly bewildered. A moment later, the corners of his mouth twitched. He was a little speechless as he looked at the middle-aged man in front of him. Without a doubt, this man wanted to bring Yen back. However, Bufang didn't want Yen to be brought back by him. When Yen was injured, where was this guy? When Yen was risking her life to protect the heavenly star-catcher disc, where was this person? With this person's cultivation, those three demons weren't his match. Yen wouldn't have been injured so badly and fainted. Bufang leaned against the chair, expressionlessly looking at Saint Sovereign Tianji. One of his hands rested on the table, his finger lightly tapping on the table. To tell you the truth, Yen is in my room now, Bufang said. As soon as he said that, everyone was bewildered. Even Saint Sovereign Tianji's eyes shrank. Chu Chongxing grinned, looking at Bufang ambiguously. This kid was good. He dared to do and dared to speak. He was a real man. Hades Era grinned, squinting at Bufang. He clicked his tongue. Youngsters these days really know how to play. The surrounding Holy Land disciples looked at Bufang with dull eyes. After that, their faces were filled with fear and anger. You dare to insult our saintess like that? A disciple was so angry that he went crazy. He stood up on the spot, his aura exploding. He pointed at Bufang, his eyes burning with anger. I'll King kill you. That disciple roared, dashing out from his seat, pouncing toward Bufang. However, just as his figure was about to reach Bufang, he was caught by a large hand. That disciple was bewildered. The next moment there was a tearing sound. Accompanied by a miserable howl, the clothes on his body were torn to shreds. His white body drew a beautiful arc in the air, and then fell outside the restaurant with a bang. Blood-colored snowflakes flew into the air. Xiao Bai's eyes flickered. He stood where he was and raised his hand. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others, Xiao Bai said mechanically. The other disciples of the Holy Land, who had exploded because of Bufang's words, were instantly filled with righteous indignation. However, because they were afraid of Xiao Bai's might, they all retreated, not daring to step forward. However, The anger in their hearts was surging. This guy actually dared to humiliate the goddess in their hearts. What kind of grievances did the saintess suffer from a restaurant that loved stripping people's clothes? Thinking about it, everyone felt extremely wronged. Bufang didn't seem to be affected in the slightest. He was still calmly looking at the saint's sovereign. "She's fine." The moment these words came out, the surrounding Holy Land disciples roared angrily again. What did he mean by she was very good? Her Highness the Saintess was so beautiful, so of course she was good. Even Her Highness the Saintess was humiliated? How could she be good? This guy looked so honest, but they didn't expect him to be so evil. If it wasn't for this iron puppet, they really wanted to rush up and fight with this guy. Mo Tianji also calmed down. He frowned slightly as he looked at Bufang. From Bufang's eyes, he couldn't see any evil intentions. Without a doubt, Bufang didn't do anything to the saintess. Continue speaking. The saint sovereign said. "I won't let you take her away. Even if you come tomorrow to ask, you can't. Of course, unless she wakes up and goes back with you," Bufang said. "In your dreams. Her Highness the Saintess is our saintess. Why should she stay here? Who do you think you are?" A Holy Land disciple roared again. He straightened his neck and his face was red. Rip! Another crisp sound rang out. Shredded clothes fluttered in the air, and a figure flew out once again. It drew a beautiful arc in the air, and fell on the ground outside the restaurant, causing fluffy snowflakes to fly into the air. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed as he glanced at the Holy Land disciples. The pressure was so strong that they didn't even dare to let out a fart. Motherf ****. Did he really have to strip people just because of a disagreement? Mo Tianji's mouth twitched. This iron puppet was interesting. Plus, even if I let you take her back, you can't save her, Bufang said. What happened to the saintess? Mo Tianji said. Suddenly, his eyes shrank and he frowned deeply. The saintess's mind is connected to the heavenly star catcher disc. Since the heavenly star catcher disc is destroyed, under normal circumstances, the saintess should be severely injured or even dead. Even if I bring her back, there's nothing I can do. If she wants to recover, she can only rely on herself. Otherwise, no one can help her. As for whether or not to return to the Holy Land, let her decide after she wakes up, Bufang said. He stretched his body, feeling a little tired. The sky outside was getting darker, and the temperature was getting lower. Mo Tianji was silent. The surrounding heavenly secret Holy Land disciples stared at the Saint Sovereign and used their eyes to remind him to bring the Saintess back. If she stayed here, who knew what this guy would do to the Saintess? The Saintess was so beautiful. All right, I'll wait for the Saintess to wake up before coming back. The Saint Sovereign smiled, then looked at Bufang with a gentle gaze. He felt that what Bufang said made sense. Moreover, he felt that Bufang wasn't someone who would do evil. So, it shouldn't be a problem for the Saintess to stay here. Of course, this wasn't the main reason. He also had his own considerations. The destruction of the heavenly star catcher disc was equivalent to the shattering of one's mind. For a cultivator, it was the collapse of their spirit sea. Once their spirit sea collapsed, there was basically no hope of resurrection. Even if they survived, they would be a living dead for the rest of their lives. It was no different from death. The Saint Sovereign leaned back in his chair and sighed. Oh right, you're the Saint Sovereign of the heavenly secret Holy Land, right? If I may ask, do you still have the heavenly star catcher disc? Bufang thought for a moment and asked Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji was bewildered. He looked at Bufang suspiciously and said, "The heavenly star catcher disc is connected to the Hidden Dragon Avenue. There's only one piece in the entire continent. Originally, it was kept by the Saint Sovereign. However, the Saint Sovereign went to the Hidden Dragon Heaven Pass. So, he gave the Saintess the heavenly star catcher disc to take care of and fuse with. Who would have thought that those demons would deceive the great path, sneak into the continent, and destroy the heavenly star-catcher disk? Mo Tianji sighed, his eyes complicated. Bu Fang was also a little regretful. The scattered star wine method of Acheron helplessness required the heavenly star-catcher disk to help. Without the heavenly star-catcher disk, it would be hard to brew this wine. He rubbed his chin. It seemed like he could only pin his hopes on an Yen. Second floor, Bu Fang's room. The starlight in the room suddenly became a little thin, and the stars seemed to be rapidly drilling into the space between Yan's eyebrows. Yan's pale face became rosy, and her aura gradually became stronger. The starlight quickly seeped into Yan's body. Soon, the room became dark. There was no longer the light of the stars. The sound of steady breathing slowly rose and fell in Bu Fang's room. All of a sudden, a soft cough broke the silence in the room. Yen, who was lying on the bed, opened her mouth and coughed. Her body was still slightly trembling. Her long eyelashes trembled. A moment later, her tightly closed eyes slightly opened. The white ceiling swayed in front of her and Yen slowly sat up. Her head was so heavy, as though it was stuffed with paste. She turned her head to look around, her face confused. Where was she? Who was she? The intense pain in her mind caused a pained expression to appear on Yan's peerlessly beautiful face. She hugged her head, bent her waist, and laid on the bed. After a long time, the pain in her head stopped. She lifted the blanket and walked out of the bed. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She first walked to the window and looked outside. The dazzling light shone in, and she couldn't help but take a few steps back in fear. She couldn't remember anything. Her name, her identity, and her background seemed to have become a blank. Just thinking about it caused her to feel an incomparable pain in her head. Pushing the door open, Yen slowly walked down the stairs. The left side seemed to be the kitchen. Yen felt that she had a special liking for the kitchen. She took a step, and as she was about to walk into the kitchen, she gently raised her finger. Sizzle! Instantly, a purple lightning appeared, and in an instant it streaked across the sky. Yan's mind trembled, and she quickly retracted her hand. That speed was so fast that she couldn't even see it clearly. Looking at the kitchen in fear, Yen was confused, and she turned around, walking out of the restaurant. The dazzling light almost made Yen cry. She used her hand to cover her eyes. A moment later, she walked out of the darkness, entering the restaurant. And when she saw everything in front of her, her entire person was dumbfounded. Saint Sovereign Tianji, Bu Fang, Hades era. Everyone in the restaurant was dumbstruck as they looked at the woman who walked out of the kitchen. Her peerlessly beautiful face caused everyone's heart to palpitate with excitement. However, after the heartbeat, everyone's face revealed a strange expression. Wasn't this the heavenly secret saintess that everyone was talking about? Just like that. She woke up? Saint Sovereign Tianji's face was bewildered. He was so sure that the saintess Her Highness would be a living dead for the rest of her life. In the next moment, the saintess walked out unharmed. Did he have to slap his face so quickly? No matter what, he, Saint Sovereign Tianji, was known for his meticulous planning anyway. It was good that she was alive. Bu Fang blinked. Yen was resurrected? That was good. Could this woman fix the heavenly star-catcher disk? Yen didn't think that there would be so many people in the restaurant. So many strangers. Besides Bu Fang. She didn't recognize anyone's face. Rumble, all of a sudden, a deafening sound arose. The air suddenly became quiet. Everyone wore a strange expression as they looked at the heavenly secret saintess, who was standing at the entrance. The saintess rubbed her belly. Her eyes scanned around, then fell on Bu Fang. Bu Fang. I'm hungry. Chapter 845. Bu Fang, I'm hungry, and Yan's voice was very pleasant to the ears. It was like the chirping of an oriole in an empty valley. It rang in everyone's ears, giving them goosebumps. However, everyone quickly came to a realization. What was going on? The Saintess was hungry? The first thing the Saintess said when she walked out was that she was hungry? They had spent so much effort to find the Saintess, and the Saintess only said that she was hungry. Were they ignoring their hard work and contributions? Why had they tried so hard to bring the Saintess back from Onerbu? Many people had been stripped naked and thrown out by that disgusting clothes-stripping demon because of the Saintess. Why? Everyone felt a little wronged. Bufang and the Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign were a little bewildered, looking at Yen in confusion. The Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign was a little embarrassed. He had thought that the Saintess would not wake up so soon, but the Saintess had really woken up. More importantly, the first thing the Saintess said when she woke up was not to greet him. No matter what, he was a Saint Sovereign of the Heavenly Secret Holy Land. Bufang did not think too much. Looking at the awakened Yen, Bufang's eyes slightly brightened. Yen had woken up. Did that mean that the Heavenly Star Catcher Disc had a chance to be repaired? Although the Heavenly Star Catcher Disc was broken, Yen, who was connected to it, was not dead. Did that mean that the Heavenly Star Catcher Disc could still be repaired? Bufang rubbed his chin, looking deeply at Yen. Then, ignoring Tianji, he turned around and walked toward the kitchen. "Sit down and wait," Bufang said. Bufang stepped into the kitchen, and the black turtle constellation wok appeared in his hand. He lit the fire, heated the wok, and added oil. Sizzle! Not long after, a thick aroma wafted out of the kitchen. There was the fragrance of eggs and rice. The two smells mixed together, entangling. After shaking the wok, he poured the food into a porcelain plate. Bufang shook the vermilion robe on his body, picked up the steaming hot egg-fried rice, and walked out of the kitchen. "Eat while it's hot, egg-fried rice." Bufang placed the egg-fried rice in front of Yen. Looking at this old acquaintance, Bufang couldn't help but feel a little emotional. He did not expect to meet an acquaintance from the Light Wind Empire here. It had been a long time since he returned to the Light Wind Empire, and he missed it a little. Yen took a deep breath. This familiar fragrance caused a happy smile to blossom on her beautiful face. She took the porcelain spoon and turned to look at Bufang. Onerbu's dishes are still memorable. In the next moment, Yen scooped up a spoonful of egg-fried rice with a porcelain spoon. The egg-fried rice was pulled apart and hot steam rose up. The golden rice grains rolled on the porcelain plate and were stained with the egg liquid. As the porcelain spoon was pulled up, the rice grains became as thin as silk. Bufang's egg-fried rice was especially fragrant. With just a spoonful, the entire restaurant was shrouded in the aroma of the egg-fried rice. Yen's red lips parted as she stuffed the dish into her mouth and slowly chewed. The fair skin on her face was flushed because of the hot steam. Yen ate faster and faster, and the speed at which the porcelain spoon scooped up the rice also increased. The Saintess was really hungry. In just a short while, the bowl of egg-fried rice was completely devoured. Even the plate was picked up by Yen, and she stuck out her tongue to lick it. Putting down the plate, Yen gently exhaled a breath of hot air. Rubbing her stomach, the emptiness in her stomach was finally satisfied. Yen was a little satisfied as she leaned against the chair. The surrounding Heavenly Secret Holy Land's disciples were dumbfounded, looking at each other in dismay. This was the first time the Saintess showed her face in front of them. The Saintess without her veil was really beautiful. However, Her Highness the Saintess didn't usually look like this. Her Highness the Saintess was so elegant, so noble, like a banished immortal. When did she show such a hungry and gluttonous appearance? Was this really their Saintess the Saintess? Tianji was also a little confused. He pulled over a chair and sat beside Yen, looking deeply at her. Congratulations! Your Highness the Saintess was not injured. It's really fortunate. Since the Saintess has awakened, I wonder if you should return to the Holy Land with me? Saint Sovereign Tianji looked at Yin and said. Bufang wiped off the water stains on his hands and sat opposite Yin, calmly looking at her. The Holy Land Saint Sons also looked at Yin with hope. However, Yin's reaction caused everyone to be slightly stunned. They only saw Yin turn her head, furrowing her beautiful brows as she looked at Tianji. Her red lips twitched as she said, "Who are you? Why should I return to the Holy Land with you?" Stunned. Everyone was dumbfounded. What was the saintess saying? How could she not recognize the Saint Sovereign? How could she talk to the Saint Sovereign in such a vulgar manner? This was definitely a fake saintess. Tianji's brows tightly furrowed, and his expression suddenly became silent. His eyes were incomparably deep as he stared at Yin's face. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. This was because he realized that Yin's eyes did not seem to be fake. She really did not recognize him. Do you know what your identity is? Tianji's hand rested on the table as he lightly tapped on the table. Yin looked at Tianji and thought for a while. Suddenly, starlight burst out from her eyes, and an intense pain spread out. Yin groaned, and her face became deathly pale. She held her head. After a long time, Yin finally raised her head and looked at Tianji. There seemed to be a hint of exhaustion in her eyes. "I am the seventh elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect, Yin. I really don't know you. Don't try to get close to me just because I'm pretty." Yin's long black hair cascaded down as she raised her hand and rubbed the space between her brows. Bufang, who was sitting at the side, was instantly stunned. The seventh elder of the Celestial Arcanum sect. How long had Yin's identity been? "This is Ownerbu. I often go to his restaurant to eat and drink. He can prove my identity." Yin raised her eyes and looked at Bufang. Then, she seemed to remember something and pointed at Bufang. Tianji looked at Yin. He raised his hand, and a golden light burst out from his hand, turning into a star compass. He pinched his fingers and calculated. He sighed and stood up. It was indeed fortunate that Yin did not die. The heavenly star-catcher disk was destroyed, but the energy of the heavenly star-catcher disk that was connected to the Great Path had fused with Yin. That was the energy that was connected to the Great Path of the Hidden Dragon Continent. Its power was extremely terrifying. Once it fused with Yin's power, how could she withstand it? Hence, she automatically sealed herself. This sealing also caused half of Yin's memories to be cut off. Yin's remaining memories stopped before she came to the heavenly secret Holy Land. In other words, it was the memory of the small place she was in. In that place, she recognized Bufang. Hence, now, she also recognized Bufang. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen? Tianji also did not expect this. However, this should be the best ending. Yin did not die. She fused with the energy of the heavenly star-catcher disk. In other words, the current Yin was equivalent to the heavenly star-catcher disk. As long as she could understand how to control the energy of the heavenly star-catcher disk, this should be considered a blessing in disguise. Bufang looked at the Yin who had suddenly become familiar. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. That's right. The Yin in the past was indeed a big foodie. She also liked to call him Old Mother from time to time. This woman changed back after a night's sleep. However, to be honest, this Yin was still more familiar to Bufang. Suddenly, the system's notification rang in Bufang's head. This notification made Bufang's gaze become even more strange. He looked at Yin. This woman was equivalent to the heavenly star-catcher disk now? Did that mean that his Acheron helplessness wine would have to rely on this woman? Ownerbu, thank you for taking care of the saintess for the past few days. Now that the saintess has woken up, it's time for me to bring the saintess back. Tianji stood up. His face was a little solemn as he looked at Bufang. Bufang was bewildered. He was going to bring her away just like that? His Acheron helplessness wine still needed Yan's help. When Yan heard this, her expression changed. She suddenly jumped up from her seat and hid behind Bufang. I don't want to go to some holy land with you. I want to stay here. Yan said. Your Highness Saintess, don't mess around. After fusing with the heavenly star catcher disc, your identity is different from before, Mo Tianji said solemnly. I don't care if it's different or not. Owner Bu can give me good food here. What about your holy land? The corners of Yan's mouth rose as she looked at the Saint Sovereign. Mo Tianji was bewildered. He was a little speechless. The Holy Land wasn't a restaurant. The Saintess had really changed. She had become a foodie. She wasn't like this in the past. The surrounding disciples were also bewildered. Until now, they didn't know what had happened. They just looked at the Saintess, who was completely different from their memories. The Saintess lost her memory? She didn't recognize their heavenly secret Holy Land? Your Highness Saintess, don't mess around. If you act like this, how can you face Granny Mo, who has high hopes for you? Follow us back to the Holy Land. A disciple said sincerely with a sorrowful look on his face. Granny Mo and Yan's face was bewildered. A moment later, starlight shot out from her eyes, and she felt an intense pain in her head. I will stay in this restaurant and not leave. I don't even know you guys. Why should I go with you? Don't even think about getting close to me. And Yin rubbed her forehead as she said, Her Highness Saintess must not stay here. Mo Tianji's face darkened. He was a little angry at Yin, who was causing trouble for no reason. A terrifying pressure was released from his body, and that pressure made many of the Holy Land disciples in the surroundings feel uneasy. From today onwards, you are the heavenly star catcher disc, not the heavenly secret Saintess. You have to follow me back to the Holy Land. If you are assassinated by the Netherworld's demons, the entire continent will be destroyed by the Netherworld. This small restaurant can't protect you. So, it's not up to you whether you want to leave or not. Mo Tianji's voice was cold, and his tone was unquestionable. No one dared to breathe loudly. Yin was stunned by Mo Tianji's words. She was stunned. Suddenly, Bufang, who was sitting on the chair, moved. Bufang slowly stood up, standing between Mo Tianji and Yin. He blocked Mo Tianji's sight of Yin. Pardon me for interrupting. This restaurant can't protect Yin. Who gave you the courage to say that? Bufang raised his head and expressionlessly looked at Mo Tianji as he calmly said. Chapter 846. Pardon me for interrupting you. Saying that our restaurant can't protect Yin. Who gave you the courage? Bufang expressionlessly said these words, words that questioned the Saint Sovereign of heavenly secret. No one would have thought that Bufang would actually retort. Could the heavenly secret Saint Sovereign's words be wrong? The surrounding disciples of the heavenly secret Holy Land couldn't help but look at Bufang with righteous indignation. Saint Sovereign Tianji was also slightly dazed. He narrowed his eyes, clasped his hands, and indifferently looked at Bufang. Before, Granny Mo deduced that our restaurant could protect the Saintess, but in the end, the heavenly star catcher disc was broken, and the Saintess was injured. Owner Bu, it's not that I don't believe you, but the Saintess cannot be lost. Saint Sovereign Tianji looked at Bufang as he continued. Bufang waved his hand. He didn't believe Saint Sovereign Tianji's words. Don't worry. I can tell you very responsibly that there is no place safer than my restaurant. Even the heavenly secret Holy Land can't. If you don't believe me, you can try. If Yin doesn't want to leave, then she can stay here. Yin listened to Bufang's words and instantly grinned. Owner Bu was indeed loyal. The cheerful Yin raised her hand and patted Bufang's shoulder, causing Bufang's figure to suddenly stagger. A wave of pain came, causing Bufang to turn his head to look. This woman. Was she sick? Did she want to slap him to death? I'm sorry. I used a little too much strength, and Yen was a little embarrassed. She didn't think that the strength in her arm would become so great. I said that Yen is no longer an ordinary person. She has fused with the heavenly star-catcher disc. Do you know what the heavenly star-catcher disc means? It is the hidden dragon continent's power that connects to the great path of heaven, Saint Sovereign Tianji said. That is not the power of an ordinary person. If she can perfectly control that power, her cultivation will explode to an unbelievable level. She will become the supreme existence of the entire hidden dragon continent. An existence that controlled the heavenly Tao of the hidden dragon. But she can't control it now. The heavenly secret Saint Sovereign's eyes revealed a trace of excitement. So what? What makes you say that I can't protect Yen? After listening to Saint Sovereign Tianji's long speech, Bufang still paid attention to this point. This fellow's arrogant tone made him very unhappy. Saint Sovereign Tianji naturally knew about the mysteries of Bufang's restaurant. He couldn't see through the sleeping dog in the distance. With this dog around, it would be easy to protect Yen. But that dog was a netherworld creature. Now that the netherworld creatures were about to attack the hidden dragon continent, would the heavenly secret Saint Sovereign be at ease to let that netherworld creature protect Yen? This was simply taking the future of the continent as a joke. He couldn't do it. Owner Boo, do you know the consequences if you insist on leaving the Saintess behind? All the netherworld creatures invading the hidden dragon continent will aim to kill Yen. Your restaurant will face endless assassinations from the netherworld creatures, and the existences that come to assassinate you will become stronger and stronger. Saint Sovereign Tianji stared at Bufang's eyes. So what? What makes you say that I can't protect Yen? Bufang said with an expressionless face. Tianji felt like he was about to go crazy. This fellow. Why was he as stinky and hard as sh*t? Why couldn't he understand his words? What does your restaurant rely on to protect Yen? That dog? Don't you know that dog is a netherworld creature? Saint Sovereign Tianji said coldly. No matter what, he had to take Yen away today. Even if he had to fight, he had to take Yen away. He really wanted to take a good look at this dog. Hades' era was instantly unhappy. He was being ignored. Why did this fellow only see that mangy dog and ignore him, Hades' era? He could also protect a woman for his spicy strips. He was also the backbone of the restaurant's defense. Young man, you're really unreasonable. That girl already said she won't go back with you. Why are you still nagging? So what if she's a netherworld creature? Do you think that every netherworld creature cares about the hidden dragon continent? Hades crossed his legs and leaned on the chair, indifferently looking at Saint Sovereign Tianji. Ziyun's beautiful eyes widened. My brother Ha, this is Saint Sovereign Tianji, an existence that even my father is afraid of. Can't you be a little more polite when you speak? Don't call him young man, plus, do you know how vast the netherworld is? Hades's frivolous tone made Saint Sovereign Tianji frown. Many people did not know how vast the netherworld was. Even if he was Saint Sovereign Tianji, he had only read about it in ancient books. He had never seen it with his own eyes. However, the heavenly star-catcher disc was related to the future of the hidden dragon continent. How could he leave it in a dangerous place just because of the one-sided words of a netherworld creature? No matter what, I must take the Saintess away today. Who dares to stop me? Saint Sovereign Tianji did not waste any more words. The long robe on his body fluttered even though there was no wind. Since reasoning was useless, he could only use his fist. Whoever's fist was bigger was the one who made the right. A surging pressure emitted from Saint Sovereign Tianji's body. That pressure caused the Holy Land disciples to tremble uncontrollably. Some of them could not endure it and left the restaurant. Bufang furrowed his brows as he looked at Saint Sovereign Tianji, whose body was surging with terrifying energy. It seemed like the other party intended to make a move, Since that was the case, then it was time to let this guy understand how terrifying the restaurant's defense was. Little ha, 3 spicy strips in exchange for you stripping him and throwing him out. Bufang took a deep breath and finally turned his head to look at Hades' Era, who had an evil smile on his face. Hades' Era's eyes slightly lit up. 3 spicy strips? Oh, he did not think that this young man was actually worth 3 spicy strips. It was a free spicy strips to not waste. Without hesitation, Hades' Era raised his hand and gave Bufang a thumbs up as the corners of his mouth curled up. Bufang, young man, you must keep your word. No one paid attention to Hades' actions. However, everyone heard Bufang's words. Strip the Saint Sovereign and throw him out? That was the Saint Sovereign, not some random cat or dog. Where did this restaurant owner get the courage to let that arrogant young man strip the Saint Sovereign? Did he really think that the Saint Sovereign was as weak as them? Mo Tianji smiled. Bufang's actions had really angered him. There was really no one who dared to humiliate Mo Tianji like this. Strip and throw him out. That was really arrogant. Boom. In just an instant, Mo Tianji no longer suppressed his aura. A terrifying aura instantly filled the air and waves rolled out. Bufang narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. This Mo Tianji's aura was really strong to the point that it was somewhat scary. However, Bufang had confidence in Hades' Era. Under the Path Understanding Tree, Lord Go also opened his dog eyes and looked at this scene with a playful expression. You was holding a cup of sour plum juice, and she was nibbling on it. Hades smiled as he turned his head back. After getting Bufang's confirmation, Hades instantly became excited. 3 spicy strips. TSK. This was really a good deal. If that was the case, then he would strip this guy who ignored him and throw him out. Young man, watch carefully. This move is called Hades' Close Stripping Finger. Hades' Era said to Saint Sovereign Tianji. In the next instant, he leaned on his chair and pointed his finger at Mo Tianji. Arrogant. Mo Tianji was furious. This guy wanted to use a finger to defeat him. Specks of starlight appeared around Mo Tianji's body. Mo Tianji's aura became even more ethereal and terrifying. An astrolabe appeared in his hand, and the starlight on the astrolabe revolved. Beams of light bloomed around his body. Heavenly secret technique. Exorcism. Mo Tianji's figure soared into the sky. His long robe fluttered, and the sound of crashing echoed unceasingly. He raised his hand and gently waved it in front of him. The pressure of heaven and earth instantly tightened, and it turned into a giant rock that smashed toward Hades' Era. Hades' Era leaned on his chair and his eyes focused. The smile on his face gradually disappeared. Crack, crack. Mo Tianji's seal on the void collapsed. With a finger, the void collapsed. In the air, pitch-black nether energy quickly condensed, forming a finger that pointed forward. The lines on the finger were so obvious. Boom! That astrolabe flew out, colliding with Hades' Era's finger. In an instant, a violent collision occurred. Arrogant to the extreme. The great Saint Sovereign is supreme. Do you think you can strip him just because you say so? He actually wants to strip the great Saint Sovereign's clothes. That's the great Saint Sovereign. Let's watch this guy get crushed by the great Saint Sovereign. The eyes of the surrounding Holy Land disciples revealed a fanatical look. The great Saint Sovereign's cultivation was ranked second in the Holy Lands. Naturally, he was weaker than the Saint Sovereign, but he wasn't weaker than the others. The astrolabe and the finger surrounded by nether energy collided. The collision was silent. The great Saint Sovereign's astrolabe instantly dimmed. Under this finger, the starlight slowly dissipated, and a cracking sound rang out. The astrolabe was covered in cracks. In the end, it couldn't resist Hades's finger. Mo Tianji's eyes shrank. He didn't think that his astrolabe would shatter. He raised his head to look at the young man. The young man's eyes were as deep as the vast starry sky, incomparably boundless. The aura from his body made Mo Tianji's heart shrink. He saw how terrifying this young man was. Boom. When the astrolabe shattered, the finger surrounded by nether energy also shot out, touching the space between Mo Tianji's eyebrows. In that small space, he couldn't advance or retreat. Mo Tianji held his breath, his eyes fixed on that finger. All of a sudden Mo Tianji's eyes shrank again. Everyone felt their vision blur, and thousands of figures appeared. Hades' era appeared beside Mo Tianji. Raising his hand, he placed it on Mo Tianji's shoulder. Youngsters nowadays are really naughty. In I's hands, you still want to struggle? With a flick of his finger, it touched the space between Mo Tianji's eyebrows. In the next instant, a crisp, ripping sound rang out. Everyone's eyes shrank. They were shocked and their jaws dropped. Chapter 847. Everyone was shocked. Their eyes shrank and their mouths dropped open. Dumbfounded. Truly dumbfounded. They were completely shocked by the scene in front of them. What was going on? How could such a hair-raising thing happen? Hades's hand, which was on Saint Sovereign Tianji's shoulder, lifted up, and his finger lightly flicked on Saint Sovereign Tianji's forehead. An irresistible force surged over, instantly entering Mo Tianji's body. Under his skin, that energy gushed out, and in an instant, the clothes he was wearing, which were made of precious spirit silk, burst into pieces. Rip, rip, torn pieces of cloth flew up, scattering in all directions, and fluttering in the air. A wave of coldness instantly covered Mo Tianji's body. He struggled to turn his head, and with his own eyes, he saw the clothes on his body torn apart. Mo Tianji's mind trembled. He turned his head to look at Hades' era, and let out an angry roar. He never imagined that the clothes on his body would be ripped to shreds in such a stealthy manner. This guy had only poked his forehead with a finger. It really was a stripping finger. One finger and clothes were ripped apart. Had he already reached the highest realm of stripping clothes? Boom! A wave of surging true energy instantly surged out of the Saint Sovereign's body. The instant his clothes were torn apart, it covered his body, obscuring everyone's vision. However, it was already too late. Everyone had already seen the scene of the Saint Sovereign being stripped. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces filled with disbelief. What did I just see? I saw white buttocks, bah! What I was paying attention to was that the Saint Sovereign was actually stripped. The disciples of the Holy Lands were a little confused. In their hearts, the Saint Sovereign, who was incomparably majestic and high above, had his clothes ripped apart by a young man's finger. The Saint Sovereign was stripped. Although this stripping was not very violent, and it was not as vicious as the iron puppet, it was still stripping. His entire body was naked. Too embarrassing. Mo Tianji also thought of this. So, he glared at Hades' era. Hades narrowed his eyes and grinned. I haven't used Hades's stripping finger for a long time. I didn't expect it to be so useful. After stripping him of his clothes, the next step was to catch this young man and throw him out. Young man, relax. I will be very gentle to you, Hades' era said with a smile. In the next instant, his palm slapped out. Mo Tianji was furious. He also struck out with his hand. His arm was wrapped in dense true energy. When the two collided, a loud boom rang out. Hades grabbed Mo Tianji's hand and bent it backward. As they collided, true energy scattered in all directions. Both of their hands rapidly swatted out. Every time they swatted out, they would collide in the air. Both of them wanted to restrain the other. Yo, your hand speed is quite fast, young man. Hades was a little surprised as he looked at Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji's eyes became cold. He, Mo Tianji, had traveled the entire Hidden Dragon continent. He had even stepped out of the continent and faced the Black Dragon King in the Endless Sea. What kind of storm had he not seen? Just stripping him of his clothes could make his mind waver? This fellow is too young. Boom, boom, boom. Boom! Their palms continuously collided. Hades' palm speed became faster and faster. Everyone's eyes were blurred, and they couldn't even see the speed of their palms. It was unknown when Emotion's forehead had started to sweat. He actually felt that it was strenuous. He felt that he couldn't keep up with Hades' speed. Damn it! What is this fellow's background? Boom! All of a sudden, a crisp sound reverberating in the restaurant. Everyone was bewildered. Then their jaws dropped. The disciples of the Holy Lands were shocked. Hades' was competing with Saint Sovereign Emotion's hand speed. However, he suddenly raised his hand and slapped Emotion's head. This caused Emotion, who was completely focused, to stagger. You! Emotion felt an indescribable rage surging from the bottom of his heart. This was the result of holding it in. Where was the gentleness? Didn't they say that they would exchange palms with palms? Since when were they going to greet each other's heads? Emotion's mind was in a mess. In the next moment, Hades' palm slapped again. Emotion, whose mind was in a mess, couldn't keep up with Hades' rhythm. His hands slapped randomly, but they were all intercepted by Hades. With a crisp sound, Emotion's body was captured. A huge force burst out from Hades' palm. In the next moment, everyone's eyes widened. They watched as Saint Sovereign Tianji's body drew an arc in the air and slowly fell out of the door. The true energy that was covering Emotion's body couldn't help but dissipate. Some people's mouths opened wide. This was because they saw Emotion's fair skin and his plump buttocks. No wonder it was the Saint Sovereign's buttocks. Boom! The Saint Sovereign landed on the ground, stirring up blood and snow. Everyone's eyes trembled as they came back to their senses. They sucked in a breath of cold air. Hades' clapped his hands. His face revealed a satisfied expression. He was also very satisfied with this move of his. That arc was almost perfect. The landing angle was also impeccable. This was a perfect clothes-stripping throw. You dare to be arrogant in front of I. Don't you think that lazy dog is strong? Open your eyes and see if I am strong or not. Hades' said with a smile. He covered half of his face with one hand, letting his bangs fall from his forehead. His gaze swept around, and the surrounding disciples of the Holy Lands were so scared that they took a step back. This was a person who dared to strip the clothes of a Saint Sovereign. When the Saint Sovereign got angry, the store would probably be turned into ruins in an instant. It was not a wise move to anger a top powerhouse of the Holy Lands. Rumble, his clothes fluttered as Emotion got up from the ground. He shook off the blood and snow on his body and put on his clothes. His cold eyes looked at Hades' in the distance. His gaze was incomparably deep. He retracted his aura, and it was not as terrifying as before. However, his eyes were still filled with an oppressive aura. Owner Boo, are you determined to keep the heavenly secret Holy Land Saintess? Emotion said coldly. Bufang slowly walked to the door. The snow in front of the door had thickened again. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back as he looked at Emotion. I respect Yan's opinion. If she wants to stay in the store, then let her stay. Bufang said. Emotion smiled, indifferently glancing at Bufang. If that's the case, I'll take my leave. I just hope that Owner Boo can open his restaurant smoothly and don't regret his actions today. Emotion said casually. Then, he turned around, stepping on the snow, and left. Emotion was still treading on the snow without leaving a trace. His control over his Zhenqi had reached the level of being as smooth as silk. The snowstorm was still howling in the sky. Emotion's body was as hard as a rock. No matter how the wind blew, it would not shake. The surrounding disciples of the Holy Land also turned around and left, following their Saint Sovereign out of the Valley of Gluttony. However, not everyone had left. Under the arrangements of some experts, some of the heavenly secret Holy Land's disciples stayed in other inns. They had to monitor Onerbu. What if Onerbu did something to humiliate the Saintess? According to the store's habit of stripping clothes, it might really happen. Although Mo Tianji left awkwardly, his arrangements were still carried out in an orderly manner. Although he did not take the Saintess with him, the Heavenly Secret Holy Land's disciples had booked all the inns near the Taotai restaurant. Ai Yen had fused with the Heavenly Starcatcher disc, so her identity was different. Her status became more and more important. Inside the Taotai restaurant, Ai Yen once again began to gorge herself. Everyone could only quietly watch as she wolfed down her food. After a long time, Ai Yen wiped the impurities from the corners of her mouth. She gently exhaled, pouring a cup of ice-heart jade urn wine into her mouth. With a gulp, the warm wine flowed smoothly down Ai Yan's throat and into her stomach. It's still a familiar taste. However, compared to before, Onerbu's cooking has improved a lot. Ai Yen said to Bufang with a smile. At that time, I said that there was a wine that was more delicious than the ice-heart jade urn wine. In the end, Onerbu made the Frost Blaze Path Understanding brew. That was really amazing. Because of the Heavenly Star-Catcher disc, Ai Yan's memories of the Light Wind Empire became very clear. Bufang pulled a chair and sat opposite Ai Yan, his face extremely solemn. Woman, did you really lose your memory? Bufang asked. Ai Yan was bewildered. Looking at Bufang, she said, whenever my brain thinks about what happened after I left the Light Wind Empire, it feels like it's going to explode. I don't dare to think about it. I'm afraid that my brain will really explode. I didn't lie to you. It will really explode. Ai Yan said it very seriously. Her pain was real. This gave Bufang a headache. A part of Ai Yan's memory was sealed. Without a doubt, if he wanted to make the Heavenly Star-Catcher disc work again, he had to unseal that part of Ai Yan's memory. However, how to unseal it? Bufang had no idea. Without the Heavenly Star-Catcher disc, Bufang couldn't use the scattered star wine brewing method to brew good wine. What could Acheron do? Bufang rubbed his chin, looking at Ai Yan. His eyes were empty. Heavenly Spring Holy Land. The rumbling dark clouds slowly dispersed. A moment later, the colorful altar on the ground was revealed. This altar was originally intact. However, at this moment it was full of cracks. Cracks covered its surface, and the lines were broken. It was unknown what kind of terrible thing had happened to it. On the altar, a man with a naked upper body was lying. The man had a head full of purple hair. He slowly sat up from the ground, his eyes still showing a complicated look of confusion. What are you confused about? This is your own choice. Suddenly, a hoarse and sharp voice arose. Amethyst Elder's eyes were bewildered. He raised one of his arms, which was covered with dense demonic marks. His palm was torn open, and a pitch-black eyeball was rolling around. Thick nether energy twirled around it. This is my Demon Eye Clan's Demon Eye Clan's Demon Eye. I have fused it with your body. From now on, whatever you need to do in the Hidden Dragon Continent, you just need to listen to me. The hoarse and ear-piercing voice continued to come from the Demon Eye. Now, you can be considered half a netherworld creature. I don't care. Amethyst Elder said calmly. It's not up to you. The Demon Eye said. The Heavenly Star-Catcher disc was destroyed, and the Great Path is incomplete. However, today, the gap in the Great Path is gradually being filled up. It seems like the Heavenly Star-Catcher disc is not completely destroyed. So, you go and find the reason for me. Destroy the Heavenly Star-Catcher disc. Only then can the great army of the Ruined Prison enter the Hidden Dragon Continent. Amethyst Elder sat on the ground, his purple hair cascading down. He glanced at the eyeball in his palm, taking a deep breath. Remember what you promised me. Otherwise, don't think that I will do anything for you. Well said, well said. The Demon Eye smiled. Buzz, Amethyst Elder's full head of purple hair instantly moved without any wind. His mind trembled, and a mysterious feeling surged into his heart. He raised his head, looking in the direction of the Valley of Gluttony, taking a deep breath. The heavenly star-catcher disk's aura is in that direction. That's the Valley of Gluttony that has been the talk of the town recently. Coincidentally, that little girl Ziyun is also staying in that Valley of Gluttony. Chapter 848. The Heavenly Secret Saint Sovereign left. Thus ended the farce of swords drawn to a dramatic end. In front of the restaurant, the blood-colored snow had mostly been cleaned up. Torn pieces of clothing were scattered on the ground. Hades' era was satisfied as he received the spicy strip from Bufang. He left the restaurant with Saint-Daughter Ziyun, who followed behind him like a little tail. Anai Yen felt sleepy after eating. She had fused with the heavenly star-catcher disk, and her spirit sea was filled with star energy. The amount of energy was immense, and with Anai Yan's current strength, she could not control it. Hence, she had lost her memory and was often drowsy. Bufang originally wanted to let Anai Yen stay in an inn in the Valley of Gluttony. However, this woman seemed to be very familiar with his room. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, she could sneak into his room with half-closed eyes. Bufang was helpless. It was not good to chase the sleeping Anai Yen out. Moreover, he needed her to awaken the heavenly star-catcher disk's energy to help him brew the Acheron helplessness wine. Everything seemed to have returned to its previous state. The blood-colored snow continued to fall from the sky, covering the entire sky and earth. Everything was covered in a sorrowful blood-colored hue. The snow covered the road, and as one walked, one could hear the sound of snow crunching. Yellow Rock City. This was the largest city located outside of the Hidden Dragon Heaven Pass. This city was built with yellow rocks, and the houses in the city were short and shabby. Due to the years of war, the economic development of this city was not very good. However, because Yellow Rock City was close to the Hidden Dragon Heaven Pass, it was an important strategic location. There were many auxiliary cultivators here. They did not rush to the front lines, but instead, they quietly helped Yellow Rock City. Among them, there were alchemy masters, doctors, and even blacksmiths. Alchemy grandmasters refined elixirs that could increase the experts' cultivation base and restore their true energy. Doctors treated the injured experts. As for the blacksmiths, of course, they forged god-slaying weapons that could harm the netherworld creatures. As long as there were divine spirit materials, they could forge god-slaying weapons. It was the main way for the Hidden Dragon Continent's experts to resist the netherworld's invasion. Not far in front of Yellow Rock City, there was a huge gap in the sky. The gap was so huge that it was shocking to look at. Lightning flashed in the gap, and a terrifying energy overflowed. That crack was the entrance to the Hidden Dragon Heaven Pass. As long as they entered the crack, they would enter the Heaven Pass. At that time, they would have to face the intimidating netherworld creatures. Night fell. Blood-colored snow floated down from the sky, enveloping the entire Yellow Rock City. Suddenly, in a corner of Yellow Rock City, a pitch-black nether aura spread out and rapidly drew something in the void. Very quickly, the void melted like ice and snow, and an array appeared. A rotating force burst forth from the formation. In the next moment, black figures appeared from the formation in an orderly manner. These hundreds of figures exuded pitch-black underworld energy as they appeared outside the Yellow Rock City. Their laughter could be heard coming from their mouth. If one looked carefully, they would discover that some of these figures were not human. Some of them had snake-like heads, sticking out their pitch-black tongues. Some had split heads, like lizards. There was also a purple-skinned humanoid creature, and a creature with a head full of sharp horns. They wore pitch-black battle armor, and their faces were filled with excitement. Their leader was the creature that looked the most like a human. However, there were 2 vertical eyes on his forehead, and his aura was extremely terrifying. The cultivation of the Demon Eye clan was determined by the number of vertical eyes on their forehead. The more eyes they had, the stronger they were. Back then, Mo only had 2 vertical eyes on his forehead, which was similar to the expert in front of them. Yellow Rock City. Our goal tonight is to slaughter this city. The expert from the Demon Eye clan, who wore black battle armor, said coldly. Then, the experts behind him revealed looks of excitement. Nether energy and demonic marks appeared on their bodies. Boom, boom, boom. It was late at night. Explosions resounded. The battle in Yellow Rock City had begun. Battle cries rang out in an instant. The human experts in the city rushed out, fighting against the creatures from the netherworld. The flames of war dyed the sky red. The defense of Yellow Rock City was not very strong. Many experts were not a match for the netherworld creatures. After fighting, they were all killed. Rip. These creatures from the ruined prison had faces filled with greed. After killing the experts, they crazily devoured their flesh and blood. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, causing these creatures to become even more frenzied. Roar. A deafening bestial roar came from the distant sky. In the next instant, huge figures flew out from the crack, flapping their meaty wings. In an instant, they covered a distance of several hundred miles. This was a Tyrannosaurus with a pair of fleshy wings. The scales on their bodies shone with a terrifying luster. Their mouths were filled with sharp teeth, and their eyes were as yellow as lanterns. These demonic dragons rushed out of the crack, and their speed was extremely fast. They sped away in all directions of the continent. No one knew what the purpose of these demonic dragons was. Within the crack, the terrifying existences of the hidden dragon continent were enraged, and they attacked with lightning speed. A palm that covered the sky reached out from the crack, slapping towards the demonic dragons. With a single slap, the demonic dragons were smashed into pieces. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere, raining down from the sky. However, just as the palm appeared, black chains shot out from the crack, wrapping around the palm and twisting it into pieces. The demonic dragon flapped its wings and flew away. Walala! As the demonic dragon flew across the sky, a white dragon egg suddenly fell from the demonic dragon's body. With a plop, it landed in the middle of the battle in Yellow Rock City. The egg broke into pieces. However, when the egg was broken, the liquid seeped into the ground. After a while, there was no more sound. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. A dark purple bud sprouted from the ground. Walala! The shadow of the tree swayed, and in an instant, the dark purple bud grew into a towering tree. The purple tree trunk even had mucus flowing on it. The experts of the hidden dragon continent panicked. What was that thing? On the other hand, the netherworld creatures revealed looks of excitement. Buzz, the tree trunk curled up, opening a hole. From that hole, black figures rushed out. A terrifying killing intent surged out. The experts of the hidden dragon continent were shocked. That was because they discovered that the creatures who charged out were actually the netherworld's army. The experts of Yellow Rock City were in despair. The blacksmiths and alchemists in the city revealed a look of despair. Facing the tide of netherworld creatures, they didn't have any ability to resist. After struggling for a while, they were slaughtered. Fresh blood dyed the entire Yellow Rock City red. The night passed. In the distant sky, the clouds parted, revealing the morning star. As the light shone down, it was a brand new day. However, Yellow Rock City had become a city of death. The demonic dragons flapped their wings, flying tirelessly. Every time they neared a city of the hidden dragon continent, they would lay an egg. That egg fell from the sky. When it broke, a terrifying demonic tree grew out. The demonic tree rustled, its branches forming a portal. The army of the ruined prison charged out from it. This was the first time the human city faced the attack of the netherworld creatures. The city gate opened, and the human army roared as they charged out, clashing with the army of the ruined prison. The demonic dragons flew in all directions, dropping dragon eggs and growing demonic trees. The army of the ruined prison increased in number, like a black cloud that covered the sky. It swept over from the horizon, covering all light and turning it into darkness. The entire continent was shaken. This meant that the ruined prison creatures were launching an all-out attack. They could no longer sit still and wait for death. Thus, the experts of the big sects led their disciples to fight against the creatures of the ruined prison. The Pill Palace, Grand Baron sect, and other sects also sent their disciples to fight against the ruined prison creatures. In just a few days, half of the continent was engulfed in war. The great path of the heavens was incomplete, so it was difficult for it to completely restrict the netherworld creatures. Although it still restricted the powerful netherworld creatures, it was completely open to the weaker netherworld creatures. They could charge into the hidden dragon continent without fear. As the demonic dragons slowly flew, the darkness spread to the entire continent. Even the remote areas were the same. Even in the southern region, a pitch-black demonic dragon flapped its wings, panting as it flew over. After laying a dragon egg, it died of exhaustion, falling into the 100,000 mountains. Dozens of miles away from the Valley of Gluttony, the wind howled and the dragon's roar resounded. A demonic dragon slowly flapped its wings, flying slowly. The Valley of Gluttony appeared in its eyes. The Gluttony God City in the Valley of Gluttony became clearer in its eyes. This was a human city. The demonic dragon thought in its heart. Then, it prepared to lay an egg. All of a sudden, the demonic dragon's eyes focused. In its line of sight, there was a figure slowly stepping on the snow. That figure stood under the demonic dragon, lifting its head to look at it. Why did that gaze make the demonic dragon so scared? At that moment, the demonic dragon, who was about to lay an egg, held back its dragon egg. Saint Daughter Zi-Yun breathed out white smoke. She struggled to run in the snow. Shortly, she saw Hades' Era standing in the distance. She was so surprised that she covered her mouth, looking at the demonic dragon hovering in the sky. What kind of monster was that? Roar. The demonic dragon opened its mouth, letting out an angry roar. The roar shook the snow on the surrounding ancient trees. Tisk, tsk, tsk. This is a papillion from the ruined prison. The egg's liquid has a catalytic effect. I wonder how it tastes? Its level isn't low. It can be considered a great ethereal realm creature. It should be a good cooking ingredient. Hades' Era lifted his head, looking at the papillion flapping its wings. He rubbed his chin as he pondered. That extremely invasive gaze caused the demon dragon's body to tremble. However, when it thought of its goal, the demon dragon still released the egg that it had been holding in. The egg fell from the sky. Hades' Era tilted his head, looking at the demonic dragon and the dragon egg. The corners of his mouth revealed a meaningful smile. Tautai Restaurant. As soon as Bufang opened the restaurant's door, a cold breeze blew in from outside, making Bufang's skin slightly tense. As they stepped into the depths of winter, the air became colder and colder. All of a sudden, an explosion arose from a distance. Bufang, who was about to enter the kitchen, froze. Bufang, young man, come out and see what I brought for you. Bufang was bewildered. He walked to the door. He saw that on the long street, the snow was piled on both sides. Hades' Era's face was filled with excitement. With one hand holding a giant demonic dragon, and the other hand holding a dragon egg that was even bigger than his head, he slowly walked over. Bufang blinked his eyes. This clown had gone to harm someone else's ingredient again? Boom! The demonic dragon was thrown to the ground, causing the ground to shake. Hades' Era flicked his hair. With one hand holding the dragon egg, he looked at Bufang. Bufang, young man, tell I loudly. This time, the ingredient. How many spicy strips can I exchange for? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.